Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church Fade to Black.
All right. Yeah. Oh. Sit and listen to a little space boy. All right. How's everybody doing? You like that? I was tweeting during the intro. Man, I'm going to screw that up one day. All right, let's go. Fade to Black. Thursday night, in the middle of Wednesday and Friday. Thursday is just a really cool show. You know what I mean? You don't have the drama of Friday, the end of the week, the end of, and then the excitement of Wednesday. Thursday's like right in the middle. It's cool. Like peanut butter and jelly. How you doing? Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Thursday, July 3rd. I'm going to light it up tomorrow night. I don't know about you. I am. Be safe, whatever you do, though. 172 days into the new year. Live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in burning hot Burbank, California. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Welcome, everybody, listening all around the world, to and fro, all across the United States, hither and thither, back and forth, north and south, east and west, up and down. Okay, my chair is scooted up. I'm comfortable. Studio's dark. Big weekend for Roswell, huh? I mean, that's going to be the place to be. I think next year, let's all go hang out in Roswell for July 4th weekend. And I know we could get a party bus together. Board it right here in Burbank. You know what I'm saying? And just road trip it. A couple of kegs, like the old days. Go head to Mac Brazel's Ranch. All right. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform. Oh, I had a quote. Oh, man. I forgot it today. I will do it on tomorrow's show. Somebody posted something on Facebook about my little salute that we do at the front of every show, and it was good. It was really good, and I meant to do it tonight. All right. We'll save it for tomorrow. Well, you know what? Tomorrow's July 4th, so we'll do it then. How's everybody? Hope everybody is great. Don't forget, I'm looking over at Twitter right now. We use TweetDeck here at Fade to Black. All of the newly anointed Fadernauts. I think that's what we're going with. I like it. If you guys dig it, that's what we're going to do. And I'm sure that Dale will be memeing that very soon. Fade to Black. So it is at JChurch Radio. Follow us on Twitter. We did a big Twitter blast over the last week or so. Did it again today. And so thank you. Everybody new on Twitter. Welcome. Hashtag DM Radio Net. That's what you want to do. Follow us on Twitter and then hashtag DM Radio Net. Go hang out with the other Fadernauts. And I think they even have a secret room that they all go hang out in. So if you're nice, I think everybody's friendly, but they'll let you know. They'll let you know. They'll let you give you the password to their secret room. Okay. All right, let's get this one cracking. Let's go. It's going to be a good night. Stephen Bassett in the house tonight. And I was saying, I remember the last time Stephen was on the show. Great guy. I mean, just an amazing individual, true American. But the last time he was on the show, I was like, but, he just got it all out. And hopefully tonight I'll be able to get a question or two in. We had just a great conversation today that lasted for about an hour. And I could tell that the two of us didn't want to hang up, but we had to save it for the show. All right, so bottom of the hour, 7:30 pronto, we will have Stephen Bassett of PRG here live with us tonight. And so should be great. Our dead guy's birthday today. Check this one out. And I'm serious. Check this one out. Today's dead guy's birthday is composer George M. Cohen, who wrote Yankee Doodle Dandy. Born in 1878, died in 1942 at the age of 64, but born on July 3rd. And think about the words to the song for a second. Why couldn't moms have held off for a couple more hours and landed? He could have hit the ground running on July 4th. George M. Cohen, writer of Yankee Doodle Dandy. So there you go. There's our July 4th dead guy birthday. All right. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag DM Radio Net. You know what to do. If you're over on the Dark Matter radio page, there's so many ways to listen to the show now. I don't know where everybody is connecting. We have all of the players on all of the sites on Dark Matter and of course, over at Jimmy Church Radio. But there's also TuneIn. I don't know if you're listening through Roku. We have the TuneIn link now at Jimmy Church Radio. So, and if you ever have any problems and it's last minute, just go to TuneIn. Click, boom, bam. I don't even think you need a player. I think the audio just comes up the last time I tried that. Okay. So tonight, Stephen Bassett in the house. I will ask Stephen's permission for open lines. I would love for everybody to get some questions in. He's a very unique guy to ask questions to. So 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. You can email throughout the show, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also, if you want, and you want to do it clandestinely, you would go over to the websites. Go to the contact page, and you can do it there, where we use non-NSA, specially encrypted servers. Contest in the desert. Last night, we announced 3 winners. Darcy Lund, congratulations. Thomas Peak, congratulations. If the two of you are listening right now, we'd love to hear from you. Call in 323-825-5045. And Sandra Rios, who wrote me a really nice email today. And she lives in Puerto Rico. She is actually a professor at a university. Sandra, I hope I didn't disclose too much there. But she wrote me, she's like, I'm down in South America right now, and I just can't believe this. This is so exciting. I'm in Ecuador. And so anyway, Sandra, congratulations. She is a professor at the university there in Puerto Rico and will be attending. She is going to get this worked out. So again, Sandra, I know you're listening right now. Congratulations. We'll get to the next round of winners for Contact in the Desert next week. To enter the contest, it is simple. Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Head there now before we get the show. Just go. Take care of it. Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Scroll down. You'll see the banner right there. Contact in the Desert contest. It'll take you right over to the Fade to Black page for Contact in the Desert. And again, we will be broadcasting. I've got to run this in the ground because it is very important. We're going to be broadcasting that night live Friday from Contact in the Desert. Everybody's going to be there. Myself, the Fade to Black crew. If you win, you're going to come hang out and meet everybody. Jump on the radio. We will have plenty of microphones set up. probably three, 4, 5 extra stations set up for everybody to just come on in and party with us. Everybody's going to be there. Dolan, Richard Dolan, John Anthony West, Linda Moulton Howe, Nick Pope, Stephen Greer, David Wilcock, Eric Von Daniken. Giorgio's going to be there with his hair. Think about that. I wonder if he uses Aquanet and what color can is on that head of his. Jason Martell. It's going to be awesome. So please, Nick Redfern, James Gilliland, and of course, Stephen Bassett, our guest tonight, will be there as well. So go enter. It's a 4-day, $400 pass. And that, my friends, is cool. So please go register and win. All right, we've got a lot to get to tonight. Let me get to some emails. Check this out. Emails. Where did they go? Okay. First one. This one came in from Dino. Came in last night. One line. I cannot wait for Bassett tomorrow night. Right? And so I'm going through my email today, one after another. Here's another one. This one's from Andy. I have a comment for Stephen Bassett regarding the truth embargo. Maybe you could mention it to him on your show. Traditionally, governments have concocted the illusion that they are the adults in this world and that the rest of us are just children. However, if they are unwilling or unable to have the ET conversation with us, it merely demonstrates just who the children really are and who are the adults. Therefore, if Stephen and your listeners could remind people to make this role reversal concept a part of the global conversation, it might place additional pressure on the governments to initiate disclosure. Only the people can empower themselves. Governments cannot. I've just got to say. Oh, he goes on. He says, best of luck to Stephen with his congressional hearing initiative. Cheers. That is from Andy in Queensland, Australia. Man, we've got so many Australian listeners. It's off the hook. Another email. This one from Brad. This is from Brad B. So many Brads, but this is Brad B. Can't wait for the Bassett show tonight. Hope you will have him take some calls. And I'm just as excited. And I don't have the time to read the rest of the Bassett emails that came in. And, really an anticipated show, and it's going to be great. Keep the guest request coming, by the way. A couple of, I heard today from, I can't say. But somebody really big, who wrote and said, Jimmy, love the show. Excited about coming on. We are in the middle of shooting our season 3 right now. We'll be done in about a week or two. As soon as I'm wrapped, first opportunity, we're coming on the show. So it looks like we'll make that announcement next week. I don't have the date locked, so as soon as the date is locked. But that guest was a suggestion from you. And just to let everybody know, Lynn Lewis is the bomb, and I'm drinking from my Lynn Lewis coffee mug. I posted Shauna's baby pic today, by the way. I didn't know if I was going to do that. And if you haven't seen it, it's over at jimmychurchradio.com. We still have it posted under Church Rant. And the reactions from everybody, we posted it on Facebook. I did it with permission, but I just had to see what everybody else was going to see. Is it, I'm serious. So I posted that today, and I'm excited about that. All right, so with that, let's take a break, and I will be back right after this. Let me, I got to scroll through and do a couple of things really quick. All right, I'm done. I have to head to something else. Don't forget, this is the Thursday edition. Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com is what you want to do. At JChurchRadio is Twitter. Hashtag DMRadioNet. This is Fade to Black, the Thursday edition, Bell Gab, and that is for you. Man, I haven't been to Bell Gab in a couple of weeks. I need to go hang out. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us, everybody.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Tonight, Stephen Bassett at the bottom of the hour of PRG. We're going to talk about the truth embargo, a bunch of other stuff, Washington, D.C., disclosure. You know what it is. Tomorrow, a special 4th of July show with Adam Go Rightly. And I got to tell you, if you're going to spend your 4th of July with us, tomorrow night is the night to do it. It should be nuts. All right. Well, you know, on the line, I have Mr. Lee Spiegel. Let me fade out. Let me bring Lee in. Lee, are you with us?
Hello, Captain of Conspiracy.
That's a moniker that wasn't given to me.
Well,
I took it.
It would look good on it would look really good on a T-shirt, I think.
I think we're working on that now. So, all right, Lee. Okay, let's just jump to. We got a little bit of time here, and I can already hear the boos in the background. Okay,
so stop those boos! Come on, folks. Everybody thinks that you and I are like putting our lightsabers together and going at it. Come on, everybody.
Okay, well, let's cut to the. Let's get straight to it. There's the pot's been stirred out there, and who's going to go first, you or myself? I'll hand it over to you.
You know what, Jimmy? You and I have been talking about this, and at the very least, I'm here to grovel a little bit. I'm not beneath that. If the headline of my story about the underwater anomaly off the coast of Malibu, if that was a misleading headline to you or to anyone else, I apologize. And you know what? You're probably right. And, once in a while, I don't put the most perfect headlines together, but hopefully, in my defense, the story itself kind of made up for a possible misleading headline, and that the story kind of helped to move the whole idea along. And you know what, Jimmy? I'll tell you this. I never actually put a lot of my own personal feelings into the stories that I write. I like to maintain a kind of a neutral attitude. But you know what? Between you and me, I hope it is a UFO alien base. I would love nothing more than for that to happen.
Well, I think that the concern, not only with the fans of this show, but with the fans of Coast to Coast and what happened on George Knapp's show, I think a lot of people were taken aback, myself included. And I don't understand why you would. I mean, you're a professional journalist. You've been doing this for a long, long time. And my position has always been integrity. And this show, Nobody has ever been banned. Nobody has ever been denied being on this show. Anybody that's ever been controversial, it's been open arms and all topics on the table, and let's learn something together.
Right.
And so why would you go on George Knapp's show like that and use that from the verbiage that was gathered? It seemed a little vindictive and a little malicious. Why would you have done that and put George in a weird position?
Well, first of all, I don't want people to think that I went on Coast to Coast and actually said that I was banned from your show. I never said that. You know, getting facts straight is really important to me, and I never said I was banned. What I did say, because I did feel this temporarily, I felt that I was uninvited, and that was a strong feeling that I had, and I didn't mention you by name because I really wasn't angry with you. It was other people who I will maintain nameless at this point, but it wasn't you, and so I didn't want to bring your name into it because I didn't want people to think that I was taking any pot shots at you.
But why would you say, well, let me ask you something directly because everybody else heard this. Why would you say, I will not name the show or the host by name? I shall not mention him by name. Why would you? I mean, the people, when you hear something like that, that's a jab.
Well, I wasn't, I apologize if that's how it seemed because I didn't want to drag you and Fade to Black into any ill feelings I might have about other people who I felt were kind of presuming to know who I am, how I work, how Huffington Post works, and I'm still not going to name names here because I don't want to. It wouldn't be proper, but I wanted to keep your name out of it, and I knew, anybody who even read my story in the Huffington Post would know automatically that I was referring to your show. I wasn't trying to keep it a secret. I was just trying to protect whatever growing relationship was that I felt that I had with you. And just so everybody knows, I don't have any kind of vindictive or negative feelings about you. I love what you're doing. I love your show. And I like your attitude. And so I think what you're doing is like a really great breath of fresh air on the radio scene. I really do. And I think that there should be more people like you, but I'm glad that it's just you, instead of a lot of people trying to be Jimmy Church wannabes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I don't know how to touch that. But there's one other thing I wanted to clear up for everybody out here. And it's been posted, and it's in forums, and it's in Paris's article, and also your response to him. There's one thing that I want to make very clear. I did not contact the Huffington Post. Okay? You called me. The first time I ever talked to the Huffington Post was when you called me on that Sunday afternoon.
That's kind of weird.
Okay. Huffington Post was contacted by an ex-employee of the Huffington Post that contacted me and said, hey, I know all the editors over there. You want me to take this story over there? It's up to you. And I said, do what you want to do. That would be great. Absolutely. 4 days later, you called me. So I did not contact the Huffington Post. And when you say things... What I'm saying.
Well, let me just say the first that I heard about you was that I got an email from you in which you said, "Hey Lee, I'm Jimmy Church, blah blah blah. I've got this interesting story that you might be interested in. Take a look at some of these pictures, and please call me today because it's like a really hot story." And then remember, I called you and I said, It's a rare thing when somebody asks me to call them today that I actually call them back that day, but you intrigued me.
Right, but my point is I did not contact the Huffington Post, okay? A third party did, a previous employee there, and that's how that ball got rolling. I know nobody at the Huffington Post.
Yeah,
you know,
that's weird.
and
Yeah, okay.
and I had told you that day on the phone. Let's make again. I want this to be perfectly clear. I said I had written you 6 months before to come on the show as a guest, and that you never returned my email. And you said, "Oh, well, and we laughed about that." And so that's it. The only contact I had with Huffington or reaching out to them was through a third party. And that's that. So when I read that, I'm going, wait a minute, I didn't contact the Huffington Post. And without naming names, I could tell you right now who that person was that reached out to me. And then the next thing you know, this whole thing, I just, my nerves are done with this. I don't want to think about it anymore. And you and I had a lot of correspondence before this, little it's riffraff started, this episode, escapade. And I didn't get it, and I was confused. And I will say, I said this to you the other day. Why didn't you just pick up the phone? You called me all the time. I called you all the time. And then when this happened, I sent you an email, and then it was the last time you and I talked for 2 weeks, and then we have to hear this stuff in the media and also on Coast to Coast. And for the fans, they know about this show. They know about the integrity on the show and my position, and you do too. And for everybody to hear about this dust up, it was like, what is going on? And for you, Lee, it's like, you don't want that. I don't want it, certainly. But anyway, I felt and feel really badly that not just between you and me, but that so many people were kind of taking it personally, because I think a lot of the audience does take it personally. And I wish that I could feel like I could freely talk about other individuals out there who I would prefer not to talk about or to talk to, who try and promote things that they think they know about the UFO field, and they presume to know a lot about things in the field that in fact they don't know. And I'm not going to cause any problems about this. This is a whole different matter. But basically, I can prove what I say when I say that an individual who said certain things about me and about other things didn't know what he was talking about. Right. But I'm hip. But I don't want this conversation between you and I to turn into what happened on Coast to Coast.
No. I'm good with that. Yep.
And I will ask this of you. My fans are listening to this show, and you have fans out there too. What do you say to those fans about this little thing? And I'll hand it over to you.
Well, I'm sorry that the whole thing got way out of hand. I'm sorry that first of all, I'm sorry about that damned headline. Jeez. It's like, headlines be damned sometimes, and I didn't even write that complete headline. It should have probably said, is there, or what is the truth behind the Malibu underwater alien base? That would have kept it neutral, it would have opened up the question, but it didn't say that. And it gave the impression that the rest of the story was going to give some truth, And in fact, that's not what my story did. I tried to keep it open-ended, but everything got way out of hand. And this happened at a time when you and I were just getting to know each other, and I was really admiring what you do on the air, and I will continue to do that, and I will continue to promote your show in any way that I can.
With that, Lee, okay, I accept everything. Unfortunately, and I would like to keep this conversation going, but we can't because I've got Stephen Bassett in about 45 seconds.
My buddy Stephen.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So with that, I'll talk to you over the weekend.
Okay.
Stay dry.
You too.
Okay. I'll talk to you, Lee. Thank you.
All right, Jimmy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. There you go. That was Lee Spiegel. I'm watching everybody's reaction on Twitter. How do you feel? This has got to be put to bed, and that's it. And that's my position, and we just need to move forward. This show is way, way, way beyond and above any type of feud in this in this genre, in this thing that we're doing, this crusade. All right? So that's it. This is Fade to Black. Let me cue up the music, and I'm going to take a quick break. All right, everybody? And I'll be back with Stephen Bassett. Stay with us. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Thursday edition. Stephen Bassett, PRG. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Russia coming in strong, by the way, Twitter followers. So let's get the U.S. back. We got to play catch up. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carzan, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Right. Fade to Black. Thursday night. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Don't forget to hashtag DMRadioNet. Jump in. Conversation's kind of heated at the moment, as it should be. It's all about discussion and learning on this show. On the Dark Matter Radio Network, I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and let's get straight to it. Stephen Bassett is a political activist and a leading advocate for ending the 67-year government-imposed truth embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He is the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, otherwise known as PRG, which recently produced the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of formal disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence, and his advocacy work has been extensively covered by national and international media. In January 2014, PRG will begin a congressional hearing initiative seeking the first hearings on Capitol Hill regarding the ET issue, the first time since 1968. I would warmly welcome to the program Mr. Stephen Bassett. Stephen, are you with us, sir?
I certainly am, Jimmy. It's great to be with you.
Excellent to be with you. Always good to hear your voice, my friend. And are you staying cool?
Yes, yeah. Always remain cool.
Always
never let them see you sweat.
That's right. That's right. So I don't know where to start. You and I today, we had an absolutely wonderful conversation and I think the both of us kind of we should have put it on hold and saved it all for tonight. But when two guys like you and myself who talk a lot and know a lot, you get started and you can't stop. And so if we can, well, let's try to pick up where we left off today. Let's just start directly. What were your first impressions when you very first saw the images of the Malibu deep underwater base?
Well, certainly I was impressed. This is a new world we're in now, when anybody in the world can look at videos or rather images of anywhere else in the world based on satellite photography. It wasn't that long ago when you lived in a place and you had no idea what was going on anywhere outside, certainly your country, if not even your neighborhood. That's not the case anymore. This is a global society capable of interacting globally in almost every way. Just an extraordinary change from just 100 years ago. And so when I saw those images, I say, well, this is not unexpected. The question is, what does it mean? So as your listeners, I'm sure, already know, this shows an unusual structure, geologic structure, or perhaps not geological structure, off the coast of Malibu, about 6 miles. It's certainly unusual, and obviously all kinds of theories have been developing around it ever since, which is fine. That's cool. But the key theory is that this is a facility, a base of some kind. I mean, if it is in fact a structure designed to be a structure, then it is either an ancient structure from a time when the Earth's waters were lower than they are now. And, you know, these structures are all over. They're finding them off Cuba, off Japan, everywhere. Though nothing quite like this. This is massive and large. So if it's a structure, then it was designed either for human beings or for non-human beings. If it's for non-human beings, then it's a truly profound discovery with huge implications. So that was my first reaction to it.
I'm sorry, I was adjusting your audio a little bit. You're loud and clear, but a little distorted. So
I'm probably talking a little too loud for this speaker. Let me tone it down just.
Now, and my response to that, Stephen, is you're exactly right. And you know, I don't know what Washington or the military complex, if there is a reason for them to react, but how they will react when they do. And, you know, I look to you for advice in something like this. You know, what can one expect if it is something that could go horribly wrong for the research that's involved with this? What could we expect?
Well, let's take a theory and run with it and see where it takes us. One of the reasons that this structure has gotten an ET component to it, and while people are theorizing this could be an entrance to a, quote, extraterrestrial base, of which there are rumors about such facilities all over the world, is because the area off the coast of Malibu has a long history of substantial number of sightings. There are also military facilities nearby. And I know several contactees that have had particularly extraordinary sightings, or rather contact. One in particular had a craft come in directly off the ocean right in front of her window of her home up on the hillside overlooking Malibu. So, not surprisingly, that has been where one of the key theories has gone. So let's assume that there is a connection. I'm going to let your listeners in on something that no, I haven't said to anybody. So this is a bit of a scoop for you. A little later this year, I'm going to publish to the internet a what is going to be called the contact equation. And it's a pretty serious work. It's being done in conjunction with Dr. Gordon Spear, an astronomer. And essentially, it's a much more modern version, upgraded version of the Drake equation, which was an equation by Frank Drake designed to try to calculate how many civilizations there are out there. Had a nice run, but it was sort of outdated now. This equation has an interesting outcome. It tries to calculate how many saucers, how many standard craft, not counting motherships, it would take to service the estimated number of contactees who are reporting physical contact with extraterrestrials based on the surveys that have been done, which shows a percentage which is impressive. And the numbers, depending on the variables you put in this equation, you obviously get a different outcome. But the conservative outcome is 2,800 saucers servicing the United States territories, including Alaska and Hawaii. The number I'm more inclined toward is a little less conservative. It's 1,400 saucers working all the time, 24 and 7 days a week. 1,400 saucers is a lot of saucers. And so where are they coming from? Are they just orbiting the planet? Are they hiding behind the moon? Or, in fact, are they in bases? Do they have facilities on this planet? And there is a lot of incidental and circumstantial evidence that there are basis facilities for ETs to operate from on the planet, which would make sense. And given their technology, extraordinary technology, their ability to fly in space at will and also to go in water at will, which we've seen it actually happen, this would not be difficult. They have the technology to create such, how would you say, facilities simply not accessible.
Right.
By humans and their tech. So, if that's the case, this could be a base. This could be a facility. Might not be still being used, or could still be used, and that would be logical given that the sightings off Malibu, the sightings in that area continue to this day. Well, if that is the case, this is potentially an incredible breakthrough.
And go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead. Well,
okay.
We have been, and yourself included, any hint of something like this, it's what everybody has been looking for. Certainly, the USO UFO activity has been occurring, but where are the USOs going? Where are they coming from? It's easy when you look at a UFO and you know that it is probably off planet or a solar system or universe. That's easy enough. But when you're dealing with a USO, where are they going under the water? And we haven't had a hint of anything. This is the first time we've had something to go on. And I'll just say this, just like you always have to, look to the evidence. What is the evidence? What's the provenance of the evidence? What's the source of the evidence? And in this case, we clearly have Google Earth images. This isn't from an anonymous source.
Absolutely. And now we can explore the exopolitical implications of this. Look, the truth embargo, the suppression of acknowledgement of the ET issue, the ET presence, began in late 1940s, early 1950s, and there was no Google Earth then. It probably wasn't even in the imagination of even some of the better scientists. And so all of that developed over the last 67 years. But meanwhile, other technologies emerged, and of course the internet is one of them. Satellite imagery is another. Accessing satellite imagery by regular people, another. Which then creates an interesting possibility. The truth embargo is vulnerable on a number of levels. The most obvious one is media. The media could get into the issue in an intense way and literally create an impossible situation for government, which would then have to probably yield and announce ET presence. Other countries could be the tripwire. Another nation simply deciding to take action regardless of what the U.S. thinks about that. That would do it. And of course, the extraterrestrials themselves can end and resolve the matter, and the truth embargo will resolve the matter quite easily. All they have to do is park a substantial number of craft over Washington, D.C. But there is another, and that one, which really has been fairly minor in terms of its impact, is artifacts, structures, anything connected to extraterrestrials on the planet discovered by human beings. Now, clearly, crash vehicles comes under this heading, and there have been a number of these crashes, and the government has been very good at getting to them and cleaning them up and gathering that material in and silencing people associated with the events. They have teams that do this. We have witnesses that have been on those teams. So this is not something they just randomly throw together when a crash occurs, like rounding up a posse in the Old West to go after a bank robber. They're ready and they move very fast. And by and large, they've been able to deal with any such events. But that is changing. And the possibility of people suddenly coming across an ET-related structure, piece of equipment, crash vehicles that was never noticed or seen before. It grows with every day. And so this comes under that heading, and this is where things get really interesting. As you and I discussed, and I pointed this out on I think I did it in Coast to Coast. I went to Coast to Coast for a few minutes and talked about this, and I brought this up. This is a number of weeks ago. Basically, what's extremely interesting about this discovery is that it's in 2,400 feet of water, roughly,
right,
24 to 28, which means it's well within excess of any reasonable team with remote vehicles, ROVs, that could go down, photograph, even travel into the areas underneath the slab or through the opening. And if, in fact, this is an operating ET base, or if, in fact, it's one that's been abandoned but has unusual structures inside, certainly artificial, evidence of artificiality, it could blow the truth embargo wide open. And this is not something the government might have even thought about or been concerned about. I would think the government would know about this facility. They track everything in the sky. They track the comings and goings of these craft very intensely, and would probably well know there's a facility down there. And suddenly it's in play, which means this, that if anyone goes out there, and I assume somebody would, to look at that structure, to go inside the underneath of that structure, and there's anything extraterrestrial connected, the government is going to have to step in and stop them. It simply would not be allowed to happen. And there was one other possibility I mentioned that night, was that one other option the government would have, if this is the case, would be to destroy it, if it's destroyable, and call it an earthquake. And those are the two outcomes I expected. And I have a feeling we're heading towards one of those right now.
Now, another thing that I'm fascinated with is the lack of reaction, because the government knows about the reports. It's in the mainstream media, and the lack of silence, or the lack of talking, I should say, and all of the silence there. I don't expect anybody to come forward and say it's nothing, but they certainly treated Area 51 the same way. And I said this to you earlier today. Comparing the two, they seem so different, but actually it's very, 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 very similar in both situations. And I don't understand. Well, I don't understand the reaction, or the lack of, I should say.
Well, I can comment on that. Look, the truth embargo involves a range of actions and postures and protocols. It's very complicated, and it has been very successful, very effective. One of the key aspects of the truth embargo is that you always want to be in a position to say nothing. You don't want to say anything.
Right.
So if Edgar Mitchell is out there saying that Roswell was an ET, you're NASA, you don't say anything.
Right.
If Philip Corso comes forward and says Roswell was a crash that was involved in technology derivations from that crash, saw a dead body on the way to Fort Riley, you say nothing.
Right.
NASA, I think, finally, after years, in answer to a question, said something along the lines of, we have respect for Dr. Mitchell, we don't agree with all the things he says. That's it. You just don't respond. If you're the Air Force, you don't respond. Because if you do respond, anything you say is now in play for rebuttal,
right,
or further discussion. And they don't want that. And so it's don't ask, don't tell. This is a very powerful component. Of course, don't ask, don't tell turns up in a lot of areas of government policy. It's particularly what I consider childish but yet effective tool that is not conducive to a healthy society. And so the sooner we get out of this don't ask, tell crap, the better we'll be. But we have plenty of other problems, so I don't want to belabor that. But they will not respond. And so the worst thing, the last thing they're going to do is comment on anything out there regarding that structure. The moment they do, it becomes 10 times more of a potential media story than it is now. The job of the activist movement, the disclosure movement, is to put the government in a position where they have to speak out. And once that happens, the truth embargo is probably done. And this has been a chess game that's been going on for a long time. But I have optimism we may be about to win that game soon. So, but having said that, again, the nature of this particular situation, since that structure down there, whatever it is, it might just be geological formation, yet still quite unusual and well worthy of investigation, my lord. That structure is not going anywhere. A little hard to, put a tarp over it. And so it's certainly potentially going to be investigated. And if the government does nothing to whatever group out there and starts sending down vehicles to look at it in detail and film it, that's a pretty good indication that it's just an extremely unusual geological formation. But if it's not, the government absolutely has got to intervene here. And then the question is, what form will that intervention take? Will they intercept ships at sea leaving port? Will they wait till they get out there and then board them and tell them they have to go? What reasons will they give for not being able to do some basic research in open ocean?
Right.
All of that. And of course, if the people doing the work, doing the research are smart and film everything, that they will have, how would you say, government entities on camera, a record of their statements regarding the situation. That then is a potential news story. The media will run with that story. And then they will ask questions. Well, why can't they? And then the question will be, well, what will it take? Who do we have to get permission from? What would be the basis on which we could investigate this very unusual geological likely formation? And then the government will have to come back with an answer. And so it goes, and the whole thing could fall apart. So this is, to me, very interesting, and I'm going to watch it very closely, and kind of excited about the possibility.
Well, there's I can't let this get away from me. Then I have to comment on what you just said. But somebody just tweeted, don't forget the earthquakes that happened right after your announcement. And you said the same thing to me today. Right after you had read the press release, what happened? What happened to what was the revelation that happened to you?
Well, about 4.2 earthquake was announced in the Santa Monica Mountains. But if I'm the government, let's assume that this structure would be a huge risk to the truth embargo, and could expose the ET reality and force the government to disclose. And I can do something about it. I mean, there's nothing down there now. Maybe extraterrestrials used it at one time. They're gone. I blow it up, right? You just blow it up. You blow the hell out of it and call it an earthquake. So what would happen is that before anybody get out there would be a quote earthquake announced that with an epicenter, 5, 8, 9 miles off the coast of Malibu.
Right.
And then the next time Earth comes around and films that structure, it's not in good shape. That's what I would do if I was the government. It's one of the few options that they have. Unfortunately, if extraterrestrials are still operating out of there, that's not an option. That's not going to happen.
Right. You can't blow it up.
So that's why this is pretty cool. Very, very cool. And if it's just a geological structure, I'm no doubt that whatever research is done on it will be quite interesting and will become a fairly substantial story. What's going on? How did that get formed? What is it? And so forth. And that'll be cool, too.
Well, you're my guy. As soon as if we get blocked, and that's a good possibility, the Coast Guard rolls up, the Navy rolls up, the Marines roll up. They all have boats out there. They roll up and stop us. You're on speed dial, and now you've got a second job in D.C. You're going to help us find out why.
But there is an actual much bigger aspect to this, which I do talk about, and let me reiterate it. When people ask me, when will the truth embargo end, or people tell me it'll never end, well, all I can do is say, well, it'll end when it ends. But I can certainly discuss at length why I believe it's going to be very soon. And one of the reasons is simply technology. Again, the situation globally and the kind of technology available to people is way ahead of where it was when the truth embargo was initiated in around 1950, which is 64 years ago.
Right.
So what am I talking about? Well, first of all, anybody films, and just try to imagine the same situation. Back in 1951, somebody sees something in the sky, they take a photograph of it, maybe black and white, and they try to take it to a newspaper, and they blow them off. Or there's really nobody to look at the photograph and try to determine its authenticity. A lot of that wasn't done until decades later. Now, somebody sees something hovering over the ocean, they immediately film it with their iPhone, they send it to many friends, stick it up on a website, post it into Facebook. So the thing is flying around the world within hours. And, of course, the only thing really that prevents these kinds of photos and videos from putting great pressure on the truth embargo is that naturally there are tons of hoaxes also being passed around at the same time. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm the government and I'm facing that kind of technological aspect to this, I'd be damn sure to feed as many hoaxes into the video photographic environment as possible, because that just dilutes it and makes it very difficult for it to gain traction. Standard procedure, no problem, no brainer. So you've got that. But then you've got night vision binoculars. Night vision binoculars are becoming a fad. Prices have come down. There's used night vision on eBay and so forth. And so I don't know how many more people have night vision binocular citizens in their hands than did like 15 years ago, but I bet it's a whopping increase, almost several magnitudes. Mm-hmm. Now, why is that important? Well, it's not complicated. The extraterrestrials, again, remember that equation I talked about?
Right.
1,200 saucers to 2,400 saucers servicing the contact work in the United States alone. That's a whole lot of moving around, which certainly explains why there are a lot of sightings, and they're actually increasing. But we don't see them all. And one of the reasons is these have the ability to operate discreetly. Obviously not completely discreetly, and that's another subject, but they operate discreetly and they're not seen. And at night, which is when most contact events, physical contact events take place, they're traveling up at heights. If they're not putting off much light, you just don't see them, period. Maybe the government picks them up the radar, but the government knows there's not a thing they can do about it, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
But once you put on the night vision binoculars, which are capable of picking up much, obviously, less amounts of light being given off by an object, suddenly these things turn up. Now, it's not the case everywhere, but if you're in certain areas of the country, boom, there they are. Some people are spending even more money, and they're creating night vision cameras or putting night vision cameras into play and filming some of these things, and you can see these videos on YouTube right now.
Right.
So, whoa, wait a minute. So now and these things that are being seen are not airplanes. It's not difficult to figure that out. Formations, large triangles with lights around the edges, all of that. So here again, the government has a problem. Technology is making it more and more difficult to contain the citizen awareness of this. And by the way, what has the government said about these videos and sightings with night vision binoculars? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, what can
they won't
say?
have to until
right.
the media asks them about it.
That's right.
Yes?
Yep.
That's right. Same policy. And has the media asked them about it? No, because the media is still operating under an institutionalized truth embargo. So you've got that. Now you throw in, right? You throw in the ability of witnesses to come forward, right? In other words, a witness can go online and survey all the researchers in the world dealing with this issue, find their website, get their email, and decide who might be appropriate to contact, maybe only with an anonymous an account. But certainly it makes it easier for researchers and witnesses to come together, which is one of the reasons why since 1990, the number of what we call military agency political witnesses. This isn't anybody. It's just not somebody that happened to see a saucer one night. It's somebody that worked in government, particularly high rank and station, officers with security clearances, politicians, whatever. Obviously, these witnesses carry more weight than just the average person having an experience. Their numbers are growing. Again, technology, the internet, all of this playing a role. So as this technology develops, the truth embargo becomes increasingly unmanageable. And it has to give at some point. This is one of the many reasons why the announcement of an ET presence should not be far off in the future. It should be pretty soon.
I just have this one comment here. Let me scroll back. I got to catch it really quick. It was about the breakaway government, and is there breakaway civilization? And so, how do you separate the two? When you define breakaway civilization and what you're doing in with disclosure in D.C., does disclosure matter if the breakaway civilization is real?
Oh yeah. It does.
Okay.
All right, let me. Yeah, this is getting into some complex stuff.
It is, and it's a weird, because if one is true, well, if both are true, then yeah, I mean it does. It gets, your brain starts to swim a little bit if both are real.
Well, let's parse this out a little bit. The breakaway civilization idea, that phrase, is pretty much owned by Richard Dolan, who has been developing in his work, his research, friend and colleague, one of the most important people in the field without question. And in fact, it was, he just presented on that, and others talked about it at this secret space program conference in San Mateo, fairly sophisticated high-end conference put on by a team out of Belgium, believe it or not. So I hope to see when I go to go to Europe in mid-September. And so he's been developing that. I am developing a similar thread I call the Secret Empire. Now, there are some distinctions between Richard's model and mine that are not without difference. But let's just jump in here. What Richard is essentially trying to convey is that the massive secret complex which was built up after World War II, primarily because of the fact that, not surprisingly, World War III was already ready to go. One always leads to another, and it was with a huge, formidable entity, the Soviet Union, and nuclear weapons were now involved. And so the planners, the military strategists, were anticipating a nuclear World War III, the consequences being rather nasty. And so the need to confront not only the Soviet Union's activities within the Soviet Union, but also to confront and contain their expansionist desires, we had ours too, by the way, was absolutely critical. And so vast that the whole concept of spying and intelligence services and so forth had to be taken up many, many notches. And so the Soviet Union and the United States did this. And they both created huge secret operations, and other nations created their own versions, not to the same degree, but certainly significant. In the U.S., I call this whole secret complex the Secret Empire, which starts growing really significantly after when the National Security Act is passed in 1947 and the CIA is formed, and NSA follows fairly quickly. All right, so this secret complex grows and grows and grows as the Cold War proceeds. And the Cold War lasted 44 years. World War II lasted 5. The Cold War lasted 44. That's 11 times more.
And
a whole lot more.
Is the empire, is it completely parallel? In other words, is every agency replicated down to? No,
not at all.
Okay.
No, but Richard goes a little more in that direction.
Right.
So he and I would both agree that this mass secret world starts to grow and take in more and more. Kind of like a black hole is. In fact, it's a good analogy. Think of the secret world as a black hole. We often use the word black ops, black projects, black programs. And it's creating a gravitational force of its own, and it just starts sucking in things around it. That once you cross the event threshold, you're classified, right? And you can't come back out again.
Right.
And that black hole has been growing since 1947. Now, Richard believes that this black hole has grown, this vast secret complex has grown to include huge numbers, huge amount of civilian projects, programs, corporate interfaces, and so forth, to the point where it's kind of like the city under the ground. a vast city under the ground that has everything, has all the facilities that any other city would have. It's got schools and this and that and playgrounds and industry and what have you. It's virtually operating on its own. It's kind of broken away and can exist completely independent in a sense on its own, but with various agendas that ultimately will affect us. It's kind of a somewhat sense of the breakaway civilization that he's talking about. I don't go that far. I don't think it's that far. What I believe is that the huge secrecy or the huge secret realms have certainly interfaced with corporations, and you have a substantial amount of classified corporate involvement in government programs. And you have plenty of civilian classified people, as well as military classified people, as well as, of course, agency classified people. And it has slipped out from under political oversight. In other words, it's kind of like a pod separation in a way, and that's the problem. It's not so much that the secret empire is controlling government. It's that the government has no control or less control with each passing year over the secret empire. But the two are not completely separated. The secret empire is significantly involved in our war production, war maintenance strategies. It's obviously dealing with the extraterrestrial issue. It's making weapons. It's doing research, some of which gets transferred into the civilian world. It's not completely separated, but it is nested. It is a secret empire nested within the entire, I guess you could say, society. I mean, I'm referring here just to the U.S., and again, there are other versions of this in other countries, and they interface with each other a lot, which is another point. So the problem is the lack of oversight, not that they're really calling the shots. Now, in the non-secret world, in the above-ground world, where everything is falling apart and dysfunction is rampant, many of the power centers, and let's include corporations here, who may have connections to the secret empire, are also trying to influence, I guess you could say, the non-secret world by buying politicians, by lobbying for their special interest, by altering politics, getting laws passed, and so forth. So you might say they're operating in both worlds. Only the operations with the secret empire are essentially shielded. But they have an extra, how would you say, degree of influence in that way. Some of the people within those corporations know what's going on in that secret empire, know what the thinking is, know where things may be going, may know such things as there's an extraterrestrial presence, which then influences how they can affect government outside of that empire, in tune with what they know. All of this is outside the working knowledge of the American people that are supposed to be essentially voting in and ultimately steering the country through their representative government. Right. All of this is not good.
Right.
It's just not good, and it'll lead the United States to a very bad place. So the secret empire is got to be reformed, right? And I also don't believe that it's running the show. People down there are not, quote, deciding who's going to be president. They're not rigging elections. They're really just very content to be able to do all their very important things as they see them, without the interference of politicians, with all the money they need, and it's a pretty good deal for them. So it's not a shadow government. It's not a parallel government. It is essentially its own kind of contained operation, shielded from government, and thus certainly a potential threat to us, because that kind of operation just wants to move toward abuse of power. Abuse of secrecy.
It seems, and you can answer this better than I can, but it seems like right around the end of Clinton's term, when he handed off the baton, our budget was, it's never in control, but at least it seems like, there wasn't that much of a deficit. Everything was okay. Maybe it was of a zero balance sheet or close enough. But here we are we've gone through 2 administrations, or nearly 2 since then. And now we're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that where it's just completely out of control. Is that where this, we're talking trillions, not billions, trillion. Is that where this money is disappearing to?
Well, it's interesting that that was a key component of the San Mateo conference. It was held last weekend. Catherine Austin Fitts is speaking to this. Joseph P. Farrell is speaking to this.
Right.
Let's be clear. Even during the Clinton administration, there was a huge, massive, unfunded liability the United States had.
Yes, there was. But what I'm referring,
the working budget.
Yeah, the working budget. What I'm referring to is where we are today. It just seems like a couple of $1 trillion each year is added onto the pile of crap in front of us, to the point where now it's if they said $100 trillion tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that's where we're at.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is this: the secret empire has always been well funded. How many trillions of dollars have been spent down there? We don't know. We may never know, but it's always been well funded. The Cold War, just in the known numbers, may have been a $10 trillion expenditure on the part of the United States.
Sure.
And that's not getting into the black budget. That's not getting into all of that. The ET issue, of course, has been going on parallel to it the whole time. But what triggered this last massive increase was essentially parallel to the Cold War, parallel to the rise of the secret empire. You had a mounting array of dysfunctions within American society. The pressure, the stress of the Cold War, the mass money being spent on it, decaying politics has created what I call multiple system dysfunction. And so that's creating its own problems. And so one of the areas where this function is extremely both dangerous and destructive is in our financial sector. And so in 2008, that finally blew out. That tire blew out on the car.
Right.
And as a result, massive amounts of money was essentially thrown down the hole to pay off bankers and investment bankers and foreign banks so that these guys would not go to jail or end up in the poorhouse. The greatest theft in all of human history, unbelievably bad policy, but whatever. And that jumped the deficit up, moving it toward the 17 trillion very rapidly. And of course, simultaneous to that, we're still running two wars that should never have happened in the first place in the Middle East. So you put all that together and you end up with 17 trillion. The unfunded liabilities are a little less affected by all this. They just keep mounting based upon fundamental parameters within our social system, and they're estimated to be up around 100 billion. And then you've got the derivative exposure, which no one knows what it is. Could be another 100 trillion. I meant trillion on the previous number. So we've got $100 trillion or so derivative exposure, $100 trillion unfunded liability, $17 trillion in debt. This is basically all the chickens are coming home to roost. I mean, this is all of this dysfunction, all of this massive displacement of money and wasted resources is the outcome that you would have expected going from 47 to 1914, or 2014, when you've got, a 44-year Cold War, the creation of massive nuclear weapons, plus proxy wars all over the world, plus a vast secret empire, an extraterrestrial presence ongoing, which the government doesn't know what to do about and won't acknowledge, and a breakdown in the political system. You put all that together, and you end up where we are. This just didn't happen to us overnight. We've been working for 6.5 decades very hard to create this mess, and now here we are. So that's basically my answer. So how many $1 trillion are being spent? A lot. Does that have anything to do with the massive increase of our deficit recently? No, I think that came about by other problems and other dysfunctions in our society. But the fact is, if we could take, if half of the money we spent in the Cold War, if half of the money we spent in the black budgets were spent on building the U.S. society to be more efficient, more functional, to be more fair, and to be properly regulated, if all of, we would be in heaven right now. I mean, we would have it made. We threw that money into in a pile and burned it.
Right.
Because we still are operating under the same operating system that humans were using 10,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, and trying to apply that to an extremely advanced global society. It doesn't work anymore. It hasn't worked for a long time. So we've basically just thrown away trillions and trillions of dollars, and now we're out of money, and we've got more problems than ever. And from some perspective, things look very, very bleak.
With every other government, take the United States out. And when I say every other, 160 countries around the world, aren't they all basically in the same bad spot that we are in too?
No, they're not. And of course, the conservatives in the right wing will say, well, that's because we saved them all from the Soviet Union and we've given them money and so forth and so forth. There's a certain amount of truth to this, but there are actually about 190 nations in the UN, and obviously most of them are much smaller than the major countries. So once you take out India, China, the United States, the countries that are left are much, much smaller. But every one of them is a microcosm of human societal options.
Right.
And when you look around the world, you find many, many instances of countries that are operating very, very well. Now, one of the reasons they're operating very, very well is they don't have a nuclear submarine fleet.
That's right.
They don't have a huge secret empire. They're not in charge of the extraterrestrial issue. They're just simply taking care of their society to try to make it operate well. And what we've seen is that is very doable, but not when you're riding the horse that the United States is riding.
I had heard the other day, and this blew my mind. I knew it. I was reminded of this fact, but that Costa Rica, rocks. It just
right.
Everything about they're coming up spades ever since they shut down and abolished their military. They don't spend a dime on defense.
Right. And the obvious answer is, well, yeah, but that's because we defend them.
We defend
them.
The same with Canada.
Simple.
Yeah, I know exactly, but
it's not that simple. Let's just say that what is important, I think, for Americans to know. Obviously, the past is the past. We're not going to be able to go back and redo it. But one of the most important messages I can give to Americans is, look, get out from under American exceptionalism. Throw it away. Get rid of it. Toss it in the garbage can. It's nothing but a liability. It is a barrier to progress. Get rid of it. It's one of the worst ideologies operating now in the United States. It's hurt us immeasurably, incalculably. Once you do that, you look around the world and you will see a lot of very societies that are doing quite well. Costa Rica, Australia, New Zealand, all of Scandinavia,
Canada.
In fact, several other countries in South America are actually coming on very strong.
Yes.
And then you look at these societies and what you say, okay, it can be done. We can do this. If we can change the way we operate, if we can alter our worldview, if we can change our policies, there are excellent examples of working societies. So let's start going in that direction. Let's borrow from the best and see what we can do, assuming we can reform some of our key issues. American exceptionalism basically says nothing is better than the United States. Anything out there, no matter what it is, can't be as good. It's not even worth looking at. Obviously, this is adolescent, stupid, and terribly destructive. So, yeah, there are a number of working societies, but they are able to do this because they are somewhat operating under the umbrella of the bad policies of the human operating system 1.0. In other words, the United States and the Soviet Union created a mutual assured destruction scenario where they both spent trillions of dollars to, quote, keep each other at bay. And the other nations, many nations, really, what's the point of having an army? If they go to war, it's all over. Everything will be useless, destroyed. It won't be a fit place to live, and I mean the whole planet. And we obviously can't fight them, so let's just live our life. let's just function. Now, in parts of the world, you've got still countries that, or nations or cultural groups or religions that want to kill each other, and so they're still in that mode, which is too bad and tragic for them. But many parts of the world were able to sort of create their own societies underneath this really strange umbrella of the mutual assured destruction. Now, the Cold War's over, but we don't know how to get to leave the permanent war economy and the old modalities behind. We're still going down that road, spending trillions upon trillions of dollars to defend ourselves against we don't know who.
Right.
Right? Is it China? Well, they have all our money. Is it Russia? They have all the oil. What exactly are we defending ourselves? Well, one of the components here may be the ET reality.
Right.
It is the hidden component in all of strategic analysis of global politics and global global and social political reality, and we're not allowed to know about it. So if you've got a bunch of people operating in these countries that view the ETs as a terrible threat, which I don't believe they are, but if they believe that, then they'll continue to run a system designed to go to war at any moment against the new threat, which is the extraterrestrials, which just happens to be a group of entities which could basically wipe us out overnight. I mean, it's like not even funny. It's like a bunch of kindergartners getting together, huddling together to see how, what they can do to protect themselves against the Fourth Army. It's a joke, but yet they can't help but think that way. And so they're caught between two worlds. They don't know which way to go, forward, backward, but they do know how to spend money, and they keep doing that and throwing it away. So it's a mess.
I just read.
As I've said,
it was just posted really quick. $21 trillion at the end of 2014.
That sounds about right. So think of this whole thing. Assuming you're not living in one of those nice countries, which of course would still be impacted if we had a massive nuclear war or other terrible things happen because of these things could spread to some of these countries. But assuming that you have a number of countries out there doing very, very well, but for a huge portion of the world's population, including certain nations like the United States, they are tangled up in a huge global Gordian knot, the knot of ancient Greek myth. It's unfathomable. You can't figure it out. You can't untie it. It's just, and it's bigger than ever. It just keeps growing. And that knot stands between basically the planet and all societies on the planet from having relatively peaceful world to live in, a world basically without want, where the essential needs are covered. And we're actually moving to a much more constructive, positive, and worthwhile planet. And what happened in Greek myth, of course, is that I think it was Alexander essentially encounters this knot as it travels, takes out his sword, and just cuts it. He just cuts it in half. End of problem. And that's really what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to cut this knot. Now, what sword is big enough and sharp enough to cut a knot this big? And there's only one. There's only one that even remotely would be a candidate, and that is the disclosure event. The announcement of the extraterrestrial presence can be viewed as the sword that simply cuts this knot in half so that now we can actually start dealing with the host of dysfunctionalities and the host of problems, systemic failures that are overtaking us at this time, at this critical time in human history, and start broad-based reform.
I have to jump in. I have to on that very, very subject. Well, the last 15 minutes, my cousin, and I'll say his name right now. His name's Arthur. Said to me about 4 or 5 months ago, and I can't remember if I mentioned this to you in person or on the phone or on the last show. But anyway, he said this. He said disclosure is not bad. Not having disclosure, the way that man looks at the universe with that question, we will run in chaos not knowing the answer. What will calm us down and straighten us out is the exact opposite of what the government thinks our reaction will be. There won't be anarchy in the streets. We will have a reason to live. If we know
yeah,
that
all things will be possible.
Yeah, and that is exactly what you're saying. And my cousin, he's not a UFO guy, he's not a ufologist. He's a fan of the show and the subject, but this is something that him and his friends talk about, and it really moved me. The way that he said it made sense. And
how old is he roughly?
He's about 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely not a baby boomer. He's a Gen X.
Right.
One of the things that's turned upside down in the world today is that governments have developed this rather extraordinary view that the way to maintain order and the way to keep people comfortable is by lying to them all the time, what I call institutional lying.
Absolutely.
And it's roughly along the idea is, well, don't tell them things that'll upset them and they won't get upset, and so forth. And that the truth would upset people tremendously, and they would riot. In other words, tell them some bad news and they get upset. This has become almost institutionalized. It's rather amazing, and I think one of the reasons it's happened is that the secret empire, particularly the intelligence component, which is huge, which was necessary in their mind, and maybe rightfully so, to contain and deal with the Soviet threat. And of course, the Soviets had the same view.
Sure.
They had to have all of that to deal with the American threat.
Right.
Intelligence is basically professional lying, deception, misdirection, you name it. And so professional lying, institutionalized menacity, became a fundamental component of American defensive posture. Not surprising, that started to spread. It's like a cancer. It starts to spread out into other areas. What's good for the Soviet Union is good for corporations. What's good for corporations is good for the Department of Agriculture. Pick any institution.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
lying, misdirection. That's how you contain and control people and keep things under control. Well, it's not the case. And what we have seen, and this is true down throughout history, when you lie, when you create false realities, that's what creates anxiety and ultimately chaos, not the truth. When you tell the truth, it may be unpleasant, but at least it's the truth, and therefore you can deal with it. And when you're trying to deal with lies and trying to fix something based on lies, you're basically shouting at a chimera. You're dealing with air, with sand. You don't even know the issue. But when you have the truth, you can fix it. And so when you look at America as a society since 1947, what you see is a people collectively who've had a massive increase in mental health issues, are taking the highest number of mood-altering and physical-altering drugs, particularly antacids, as well as other drugs to deal with anxiety and depression. We've got all kinds of diseases. Those are fundamentally immune-related diseases, and I mean tons of them. We lead the world in several of them. And immune diseases are primarily based upon reduction in the immune system, which is usually and often brought on by stress. So you have a whole group of people, now 300-some million, who are under tremendous stress all the time, heavily anxious, frequently ill, having to take all these medicines to cope, because they are virtually swimming in an ocean of institutional lies. They can't trust anybody. They can't trust any policy. They don't believe in anything. They're adrift. And that is, in a few words, the American situation 69 years after we had our greatest success in defeating the truly evil Axis powers. This is not a good run. It's basically one full lifetime. And it's taken us to a very bad place. Now, we either turn things around and get going in the right direction, or the ultimate outcome is going to be pretty awful. And in order to turn things around, it's going to require some significant changes in worldview and some real deep self-analysis, societal analysis.
When do you think this systemic habitual lying started? I mean, you can almost throw that timeline right onto 1947, and I hate to point at Roswell so obviously, but World War II. I mean, was this kind of institutionalized lying going on in the 1800s? It really wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. 47 isn't it either. I mean, they founded the CIA. They passed the National Security Act, and the game was afoot. But it took a number of years for the secret world to build up and be doing its thing and get its tentacles out there and starting to influence, right, the affairs of nations all over the world, all under the aegis of we must contain the Soviet Union, which, to be fair, was not an unreasonable argument at the time. But
No,
face it,
well,
the
I'm
Soviet
gonna.
Union was a problem.
I will say this: I have my family is, I have a lot of Russian in my family here, and also in the Valley, as you know, huge Russian community up here, and I've got to say that they just accept. I'm talking about the civilian, the non-government, the politicos in Russia,
Right.
just accepted the fact that. Okay, it's the government, and then it's us, and whatever they're saying, whatever, it's the government. They're, and
Yeah.
they had a different view here, and you have to understand, I love this country, but we have just come so accustomed to the big lie and believing the big lie, and moving forward in the status quo. Daily, going to work, making that mortgage payment, coming home,
Right.
and dealing with whatever, and just accepting it, moving on instead of challenge.
Well, the interesting historical reality on this is that the Soviet Union just starts developing after 1918, and by 1947, by the end of the war, it was already 29 years running. And the Soviet Union was an ideological control state based upon a great deal of lying, propaganda, and so forth. And so the Soviet Union was already well down the road there come 1947. We weren't anywhere near that.
Right.
So they had a head start.
Well, Stalin,
And the Soviet
Stalin.
Union,
You can put it all on the shoulders of Stalin, and that's what he did do. Obviously,
well, they all did. I mean, all
Right.
of them. The whole system was based on that.
Right.
And so, guess what? By 1991, 73 years after the Bolshevik Revolution, this ideological control state, based upon just dousing the people with lies day after day after day, misrepresenting everything, collapses. One of the most spectacular collapse probably in human history, where a massive empire dissolves into 14 other republics, huge portions of just lopped off, and then the ruling party is outlawed because it collapsed under the weight of institutional lying and propaganda. It was inevitable, and it had to happen. Now, we don't start creating our version of this really until after World War II, but it didn't start in 47. It took a while for the secret world to build up, for all these policies to get into play, all these protocols, modalities, and what have you. I think the beginning of the institutional lying, which is taking us pretty much where the Soviet Union got taken, though the consequences may be even worse. The date that I give it is it's roughly early 1964, and I forget the exact month. March comes to mind, might be a little later, might have been June, don't know. I could Google it in 5 seconds when my computer's turned off. And this is to me the date that I use is the starting point in our race towards collapse, and it's now known as the infamous Gulf of Tonkin resolution.
Absolutely.
And in this instance, the U.S. Congress, either knowingly or unknowingly, was fed a lie about what happened to the Gulf of Tonkin and passed a resolution that gave Johnson the license to basically explode the Vietnam War, which turned into, of course, complete catastrophe. And since then, as you go forward, you're seeing this happen over and over again, and then it starts to spread out of the pure national security realms and into other realms. Corporate lying and manipulation, of course, was well established, but starts around the same time. You have the cigarette industry basically lying to the public for decades and killing millions of people and getting away with it. So again, lying by corporations, lying by government. By 1964, it's fully underway. And since then, while there's been a modicum of progress in dealing with corporate lying, that didn't work its way up to the Wall Street level, unfortunately. So Wall Street was lying through its teeth. The government's been lying through its teeth. Trust and approval ratings and institutions across the board have collapsed. The Congress, the president, corporations, the media, you name it, because people are starting to understand how much lying has been taking place. And while they've lost trust and don't know what to do, they still haven't been able to figure out how to fix it. And so we're going down the same path as the Soviet Union. Obviously not exactly the same. We're a democratic republic. They were I'm not sure what they were. Well, they're basically a communist totalitarian state with sham elections. But it's going to take us to the same place. This cannot hold. You cannot run a vast society on corporate government lies over and over again and somehow expect it won't collapse. So the only answer, really, to our dilemma is to start telling the truth. It seems a little simple, but in fact it's quite easy. I mean, it's not easy, but it's actually simple. You start telling the truth about as much as you can, and the more truth that gets told, the more people will start to, how would you say, reassess you and start to provide some trust in you,
right.
And thus things will get easier. And then the easier things get, the more you can tell the truth, and so forth and so forth. And so you just start the curve upward. So the government has to get in the truth business. American corporations have to get in the truth business. Is that likely to happen?
Yeah, and you left out, well, you probably just Operation Mockingbird, and that was, I believe that was 65, 66, right after your key date of 64. And that's another example of not only trying to create the lie, but publish the lie too and control the lie. And that, I don't even know, did they even stop Mockingbird, or it probably is still, I would think.
What happens with things like that is they stop a quote public version of it, but then that just helps to screen a black version of it. Remember, 64 is the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. 1968, they hold the last congressional hearing, basically to shut down essentially the government interactions, public, known interaction with the issue. They destroy NICAP. They cancel Blue Book. They do the Congress report.
Right.
These are all whitewashes, basically, in one form or another.
Right.
And so again, they're trying to create a complete false understanding in the American people that, the ET UFO thing is not really important or real because we're not even doing anything with it anymore. It's not even on our radar. All this happens between 64 and 69 in five years. And then it just goes on from there. And so the institutional lying has continued to grow. And I picked the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution as a decent starting point. And it leads to our unraveling. Now, how do we get back in the truth business?
Exactly.
Here's the beginning. You want to get back in the truth business, and you don't want to spend the next 30 years doing it. You got to start with a real big truth.
A cleansing.
A major one.
A major
right?
one.
Something that gets everybody's attention. You just don't come out. I mean, like not that long ago, you had a number of things that came out about abuses of government, the Tuskegee, Alabama experiments on black men and things like that, where they finally told the truth. Yeah, we experimented with them. That's a truth. It's helpful. Some people were not glad to hear that. It's nice that you're taking responsibility and telling us the truth. It's been a long time. Almost everybody's dead, and there's no reparations, but it's a truth. That ain't going to cut it. You got to go up about 10 magnitudes above that if you want to convince people that you're now going to try to get into the truth business. And there is one truth out there that is tellable tomorrow that's every bit as big as required. And that, of course, is the acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence.
Absolutely.
You tell that truth, and you will have 7 billion eyes focused on you from that moment. And if you start throwing some more truths on the fire after that, or on the stove to cook, people will start to pay attention even greater. And so the reform process could begin. So for me, disclosure is not just, the ETs are finally here, yay, let's party. Half the world's people already know they're here. And the other half are leaning that way. A good portion of the other half are leaning that way. Disclosure is much more important than that. Disclosure is the point at which Human Operating System 1.0 finally comes to an official end, and Human Operating System 2.0 begins. And if the people use that focus, that 7 billion eyes all looking in the same direction, and trot out in front of those eyeballs all the key issues that need to be addressed, and we start the institutional reform that's needed, we could very quickly transform the circumstance of this planet, not only the human condition, but the environmental condition, so that not too long into the 21st century, we may be on the right track again, and we may be looking at a healthy planet with people that have all their needs covered. And of course, now and to go there, you've got to get into technology issues and suppress ET technology, and the withholding of technology, and the confiscation of patents, and a bunch of other stuff they've been doing, again under the rubric of national security, which are causing tremendous damage. But all these things could happen very quickly. So to me, and this is why Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel called their book AD, A period D period, after disclosure. Because in their mind, and I have to agree, is that in the future, the timeline could very well be aligned to the disclosure event. And you may even see society counting their time years after disclosure. That's the beginning of the new world.
Would there be any cross-border, country on country war at that point? Would there be a need for it? And I think that's one of the big turns in AD. I don't think Zabel and Dolan touched upon this that much. They did, but I mean, you wouldn't look at other humans, a brother on brother. You just wouldn't look at yourselves the same way anymore. And then you kind of look at those famous words of Ronald Reagan, where maybe that truth will come to pass. In that,
well, I understand what Reagan was doing, but that's not the case. In other words, I get it. That's Human Operating System HOS 1.0. All right. In other words, it's a threat. Let's all come together.
Right.
Well, that's BS.
You think that's too kumbaya?
Well, no, it's not kumbaya. Well, no. Look, if it's a threat, we're done. All right. This is something that people have got to understand.
Right.
This isn't the U.S. containing the Soviet Union. This isn't World War I. If ETs are truly a threat, we have no chance at all. None. Zero. We cannot win. Now, if they want, they could keep us alive so we wouldn't die, but they could pretty much have their way, do whatever they wanted. You say, oh, no. So when you have these shows like Falling Skies, I mean, I watch it. It's amusing. It's funny. It has its moments, and it's kind of cool TV at times, but in terms of any sense of connection to reality, no, not a chance. Michio Kaku was trying to get this point across when he talks about Type 0 civilizations, Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, Type 4. But the best analogy I can give is that with respect to, quote, violence, war, contention, we are a giant classroom filled with kindergarten students, and they are starship troopers. We can't win. I can give you a dozen ways they could annihilate us tomorrow, and there's nothing we could do about it. So they can't be a threat. So right away, his whole analogy is pointless. So what's the next version of this? Well, the next version of this is actually more likely the reality, thank God. And that is this: once the human race is aware they're not alone in the universe, and I mean formally aware, everybody can just acknowledge it, speak it, and we can engage it, discuss it, talk about it, study it, then everything will be looked at in different ways. And a huge portion of Human Operating System 1.0 is no longer useful at all. It's out the door.
With that, my producers are on me for a break. Let's take a quick break. grab a cup of water, a glass of water. We'll be back in 2 minutes, and maybe we'll take some calls if you don't mind, Stephen. Okay, I'll be back. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us. Fade to Black Thursday.
This is William from La Crescenta, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Jimmy Church. My name is Alan, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
He's always giving it to you straight.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio, the Revolution.
Oh, yeah. Fade to Black. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag DMRadioNet. The Fadernauts are all active tonight. Talking to Stephen Bassett from PRG. Stephen, are you still with us?
Certainly.
Okay, let's pick up where we left off there. In a weird way, I think that Ronald knew something, and I think that all of us were thinking that very thought, but he's not going. He made that very same statement. It wasn't just at the United Nations. He kind of ran it in the ground. I think he said it like 16 times, and it made it. Didn't it feel like he was implying something, or was it just a masked threat? Back at the Soviet Union that we're ready to go.
No. My sense of this, and no one knows for sure, until such time as maybe some documents turn up, some memoirs from somebody at the time. But I believe what happened, the best sense I have is this. Reagan was an affable guy, not a detailed guy too much, let others do their thing. And they came to him, the military came to him, early in his administration, basically to sell on the SDI program. And the SDI program was extremely controversial. And when it was put out, of course, it was put out as a strategic defense initiative to, quote, be able to shoot down missiles from space or from anywhere else, so that we would be saved from a nuclear exchange with the Soviet Union. Very quickly, many scientists, including Carl Sagan, immediately sort of ran the numbers and said, no way, it can't possibly work. And so it became a big controversy. But Reagan stood by it, and he hung tough. And I think the reason he hung tough was this. When he was approached on the SDI program, I think what they told him was, Ronald, this isn't what the SDI isn't really about the Soviet Union. Has some potential possibilities there. If we threaten to do it, they may see how much it's going to cost for them to counter it, and it may put huge pressure on them economically, and so it could impact the Cold War. But we really need to do it because of this ET thing. Because Ronald, there are extraterrestrials here. Remember you had that sighting and so forth. Well, it's real. And Ronald being Ronald, I don't think he even would have wanted a briefing. It would be like, fine, ETs are here. You don't need to give me the entire briefing and the whole history of it. That you guys handle that. You're the one, but I appreciate it. So they confirmed him the ETs here, and that's it. And so the reason the SDI program was pushed as hard as it was, and the reason Reagan stood so strongly with it, was that he knew there was this, quote, hidden basis for it. So they were basically saying to the president, there's a potential threat from non-humans, and we need to defend against it. Now, Reagan, being him, kind of an easygoing guy in a way, kind of affable, he has this extraordinary information. He's had it confirmed to him by his top people, maybe the Pentagon, that ETs really are here. He hasn't gone out to Area 51 or looked at dead bodies or anything like that. He just knows it's true, and he just couldn't resist talking about it. It was, just imagine how he felt. This is an amazing thing, and I know about it. And so he kept popping it in to his messages. But, and when you look at his statements just on their face, what he's saying is, what if there was a threat? Meaning, and he'd been told that there was. Well, wouldn't we all come together? So in a way, he was inoculating the public regarding that idea so that they might be more receptive to it if it got out. And that's why he kept saying that, because in his mind, clearly, Soviet Union aside, an actual threat from extraterrestrials was a pretty big deal. And clearly, he would want us to be able to defend ourselves against it, but he couldn't actually say that, because if he did, he ended the truth embargo. He couldn't come in front of the public and say, we are under a threat from extraterrestrials. It's been confirmed to me by my top military people, and therefore it's necessary for us to come together and let's end this silly Cold War and start aligning ourselves against the evil, ETs. He couldn't do that because the truth embargo could not end under Reagan, to be sure, right?
Absolutely.
Not while the Cold War was in place. And so he created this scenario. And that's my way of sort of explaining what happened there.
And every other president, strangely silent. Nobody ran with that. And we got a call. This is Dino. Dino, how you doing tonight?
Hey, boy, thank you. I'm excited tonight. You're the guy. That's why I wanted you on the show, Stephen. And I've given you money to back up what you're doing. So
double thank you.
Yes,
absolutely,
well, I believe in you, and tonight. There's so many things we could talk about. I think you're right on about Reagan. My father met him briefly when he was alive years ago, before he got in politics, and my dad was riding horses next to him and at a beach, and he just went up and said, "You're Ronald Reagan." He goes, "That's right," and he rode with him for about an hour, and my dad was quite a hand, and so when they parted ways at the stable, he looked at my dad and he says, "Well, Gene," he said, "I can tell you're quite a hand." He said, "I guess you can tell by looking at me. What I don't know about horses could fill a book," and that's a true story. So I think the thing now is, though, Stephen, that I wanted to ask you, I've been so excited that you're on, is now that we've postponed the disclosure thing from May, I was telling everybody it's going to happen in May, watch the media, right. And I guess it's going to be, October now?
Actually, November, and as soon as we're done with your question, I'm going to tell the listeners about the Congressional Hearing Initiative and where it's at and what's going to happen. Okay, well, the main thing I want to know is, and without letting the cat out of the bag, how are you going to, you say that 50% of people know that there are things happening out there, and the other 50% no. I don't know how you know that, but when I talk to people, especially the last couple of years where I've been open, I never used to talk openly about my beliefs and all this cover-up and disclosure, and I get some people who respect me, but, when you bring it up, they're still not quite sure, and I just don't know what you're going to do to convince senators and Congress people, even though that DVD is great and the hearing last year was exciting to look at the excerpts of, and it's very compelling to me, but some other people, I don't know. So what I do, I don't know what you will do to get, some of the senators out here to actually say, okay, I'm going to pull the thing and call for a hearing, because I think they're afraid, those that are not on the payola. So I don't know what you can do. The thing that I do when I get someone who knows nothing about UFOs, they just heard a story, or they think it's funny, or they think people are being silly or crazy, I tell them, look at that CIA confession interview that Richard Dolan did. And I've sat down with people in my living room and put that up on the screen, and I go, what do you think of that? Do you think that guy's lying? How will you get senators and Congress people to bite the bullet and say, okay, let's do it. Let's pull a hearing. All right.
Great question. Thank you, Dino.
Thank you.
Okay, Jimmy, let me give people the update here. It's not about convincing, it's certainly not about convincing any member of Congress the ETs are here. They can believe whatever they want. I don't care. It's much trickier than that. here's the situation. The U.S. Congress has not held hearings on the subject since '68. There have been a couple of hearings about ET or extraterrestrial life of some kind somewhere, anywhere in the universe, but a couple of those. I don't even count those. They don't matter. There was one recently. Doesn't matter. It's basically the SETI people trying to get more money for their propaganda science that they got going there. So it's about creating a situation that triggers the disclosure event. Right? Now, to get back to, before I get into that, let me mention to the caller, the reason I'm giving you those numbers is this. There have been a number of polls done on American people on this subject, a number of them, high-level polls. And these are anonymous polls. In other words, people are able to say what they think anonymously. That's very different from what people will say publicly. Right? That's why polling is important. You actually find out what they think because they're not under pressure to say something else. And 50% roughly believe this phenomenon is extraterrestrial. Remember, the UFOs or ETs are here now, 50%, and the numbers skew to education. So as you go up in education and income, it's more than 50%. This is exactly the opposite of the propaganda the government put out years ago. Mm-hmm. As you go down in education and income, it's less than 50%. What does that mean? It means that the percentage of people working on Capitol Hill, all of whom are relatively are pretty well educated, is higher than 50%, 60, 65, who, if they were privately polled, would say, yeah, I know it's got to be extraterrestrial. So that's the first point. These comes from polls. Now, the remainder, right, it's not like it's all or nothing. Of the 50% of the adults in this country that are not ready to say yet the extraterrestrial phenomenon is here now, logically, a certain percentage of those are already kind of leaning that way. They're just not prepared to say it. They're not there yet, but they're not adamantly opposed to the idea and maybe favorable to it.
Or maybe they don't care as well, too.
Well, some don't care,
right?
But some do. But they just, the answer is no. I don't believe it yet, but I'm open to it and I'm leaning that way. So that's the soil upon which we're trying to grow these plants. It's pretty rich soil. That's the first point. Now, here's the second point. Situation is this. The reason there haven't been hearings is simple, and there have been many attempts to have them. I was involved in a couple. I know people involved in some. They've all been blocked, all been stopped cold. Is that those in the know in government on the ET issue are fully understand that if hearings were held, proper hearings were held, not just some one-day thing to say you did it, and the kinds of witnesses now available were brought in, it would be over. That would be it. And so they can't have those hearings. So the strategy is to have them anyway. And the thing that changes the equation and makes it possible to calculate a result is the citizen hearing on disclosure. That's the new piece on the chessboard. The citizen hearing on disclosure was held last May. It lasted for 5 days, 30 hours of testimony, 42 witnesses, 6 former members of Congress, and it was all filmed. This has never been done before. It's unprecedented. And that is the game changer, because what we're going to do, and it's been delayed now for almost 7 months because of multiple issues, and it's unfortunate, but eventually, soon, we're going to have those DVDs completed for delivery to Congress, as well as to the contributors that contributed to the campaign. They'll get their sets as well, roughly the same time. Is that we're going to launch a congressional initiative, a congressional hearing initiative, broader, more comprehensive than anything ever attempted before. And what we're going to do, as I've said many times, and again, I've also said it's going to start, in April, it's going to start in June. Well, now it's been moved up one more time to November. It's going to start on November the 5th, the day after the election.
Ooh.
And by the way, aside from the problems we've had and the delays internally to getting the DVD sets done, it turns out the politics in Washington has deteriorated dramatically in the last 7 months. So that, in fact, this timing, the ultimate timing, may be, in fact, far more beneficial, far more appropriate than what was planned. All good. I mean, great. Sometimes things just go your way. We will ship a full 10 DVD set of the entire hearing to every member of Congress, every House and Senate office, which represents approximately 10,000 staffers on the Hill, everyone with a laptop computer with a DVD player in it. And just prior to shipping, we will launch a publicity campaign, not only press interviews and this type of thing, but also a campaign to get citizens all over the country to tweet and email their representatives, right, as constituents, letting them know these DVDs are on their way. We want you to look at them. We want you to talk to Mr. Bassett, who is a registered lobbyist, and we want hearings on this subject. And we're going to rain those tweets and emails down on the Congress so that even before the DVDs get there, they will be damn well aware they're coming. And then after they've been there for a few days, after they've already arrived and been distributed, I will begin. And by the way, the DVD sets will also be accompanied by a letter signed by the witnesses at the citizen hearing, calling for the disclosure, calling for the Congress to hold the hearings and so forth. Then I will begin approaching the offices to meet with staffers regarding those DVDs and so forth. And there will be a constant publicity campaign underway that will continue for the next 90 days so that they're never going to get away from it. It's going to be in their face all the time. And I'm going to get hearings. I'm going to get meetings. I'm sure of that. Now, just because I get a meeting with some staffers, and we'll be targeting those members of Congress who are sitting on the right committees. If they're not on a committee that is appropriate for a hearing, I'm not going to be approaching that office. Still, that's a lot of members of the House and Senate. That's not enough. What changes the equation so that when I get up there, this time we may get the hearings, and it's the citizen hearing on disclosure DVD sets. Because when any staffer opens that box and puts any one of those DVDs in a player and watches it for even 10 minutes, what they will see is the witnesses, what they're saying, the quality of their testimony, the setting, which is designed to look like a congressional hearing. They'll see former colleagues that they may probably know in most cases. A couple of them served 20 years.
Sure.
One's a legendary senator. They will see them sitting there asking intelligent questions, listening to this testimony, and they will see, particularly if they watch a reasonable amount, them being transformed within a short amount of time from people that are generally on the fence on this issue to be profoundly affected by it, wanting to even help out, calling for the truth, calling for hearings. And so what this DVD set does is strip all of the perceived risk, out of the action. In other words, if you're a member of the House or Senate and you're wondering how it'll go, if I were to actually call on hearings, actually get my chairman and my committee, try to get them to hold hearings, and we have it, what's going to happen? Is it going to be a fiasco? Is this going to be a political mess? Well, there's the answer. It's on those DVDs. They'll see exactly what's going to happen. So it takes the risk out of it. And ultimately what it comes down to is I'm simply asking a committee of the House or Senate to call for the hearings, to arrange for the witnesses to come in, and we've got plenty of them, and to just sit there and listen. They're going to sit there and listen. If they want to ask a question, they can ask a question, right? I'm not asking any member of Congress to walk out on the Capitol steps and proclaim their belief that extraterrestrials are here. They don't have to do that. All they have to do is simply sit there and listen. However, something else will be happening when those hearings take place. The room will be filled with cameras of every major news operation as well as many foreign press. And every minute of those hearings will be filmed and watched around the world. And that is what will trigger disclosure.
Do you have plans? Do you have plans on? I believe I asked you this before, but I'm going to do it again. Do you have plans for the Oval Office? A package wrapped up in a bow and presented to the sitting president?
Well, it's not like that. But there will be DVD sets delivered to certain members of the White House staff.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Selected members of the White House staff. That's not where this initiative is focused, but we're certainly going to send them some.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
let me put a perspective on this.
What about Hillary, or what about anybody that might be running in the next election? Are you planning on delivering anything to them and possibly making that a platform?
Well, Hillary already knows there's an ET president, so that ain't going to alter her mind at all, or Bill Clinton for that matter. But but no, the focus is fundamentally in the Congress.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Now, to put this in perspective, in my lifetime, and I lived in Washington quite a bit, I've seen several political media frenzies. They call them feeding frenzies. And it's pretty much equivalent of 10,000 piranha, right? And if you're in the lake and 10,000 piranha show up, you're done. You're finished, right?
It's a bad time.
You can blather and you can scream, you can yell, you can lie, whatever the hell is going to work. You're done. And that's what happens when the press goes into that mode. One of the greatest feeding frenzies of all time was over an incredibly important, extremely important global issue, the sexual affair between President Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. And that whole affair was for a good while being managed by the White House. And Lewinsky was under a lot of attack. She was getting significantly derided. The press was not particularly sympathetic. Linda Tripp, who was her friend and chief spokesperson for a while, was despised by the press. And all of a sudden, Linda Tripp turns up at a press, reporter's office with what is now famously called the blue dress. And all hell broke loose. And the media went into full frenzy. And the president was done. As you know, he would have to confess to the American people, and ultimately he was impeached and blah, blah, blah. And during this whole frenzy, there was this one day, and I remember it well, when Monica Lewinsky had to appear in the federal court, district court, downtown Washington. And I happened to be going downtown that day. And this building sits in kind of it's a big corner thing, and but at the corner it's kind of curved, street that goes around it, and some curves and whatever. Anyway, I drove down. I actually drove by the courthouse, and out in ringing the entire courthouse, district courthouse, one after another in a continuous chain that went on all around the block, were television trucks. You know, the vans that have the antenna on the top and all that, rigging the entire courthouse. And inside, of course, was a massive amount of media covering, watching, filming everything that went on. Because Monica Lewinsky's revelations about the president's affair was the most important issue in the world
at that
day.
moment. Yes.
Now, let's translate that to late this year, early next year, when former Air Force officers on SAC bases who will multiply testify that craft, pretty much extraterrestrial craft, almost certainly came down, hovered over the SAC bases and turned off missiles. Not once, but a number of times. And some of the other testimonies we have. The media will be there, and the media will go nuts. And that'll be that. And what will happen is the president, as this unfolds, the president in the White House will realize, just like Bill Clinton did, that the jig is up. And they're going to have to act. But in order to do that, what the president will have to do, which we've been telling him for years now, is he can't just suddenly call a press conference and announce the ET presence. It would be a fiasco. He will have to send a representative to the Pentagon. They're going to have to cut a deal. And it'll be a private, secret little deal. And essentially the president will tell the Pentagon what he needs from them in order to do this, because we're running out of time. It's about to blow out in the open, right? And we're going to look like idiots, so let's get ahead of this. And the Pentagon will tell the president, well, yeah, but if we're going to tell the people at the ET presence, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need you to take this action, we need to be able to handle the post-disclosure world, or at least that initial time, in a way that's most conducive to national security. And once they reach an understanding, quid pro quo, the president will go out in front of the American people and announce it, and acknowledge ET presence. If they don't, then essentially the media will run the issue to ground. And they will force it out of the government by starting to ask the actual questions they should have been asking 40 years ago, 20, 30 years, whatever. the obvious questions, which anybody would know, but actually do it and mean it and back them up. And of course, once that starts, all goes to hell. So, my message to the White House continues to be the same. One, if you don't disclose the ET presence, another nation is going to do it ahead of you, and that nation could be Russia and Vladimir Putin. Think about that. And if you are going to disclose, don't even wait for the congressional hearings. Do it. Do it now. Do it tomorrow.
Right.
Get it out of the way. The more ahead of this issue you get, the more it appears to the American people that the president and the military intelligence community have finally made a decision to tell them the truth, the biggest truth in the world, to do it in an appropriate and proper way, the more benefit you will get from it. The more positive will be your position post-disclosure. The longer you wait, right? Meaning, let's say you wait until the congressional hearings get underway, and then the press starts to heat up. If you act then, it's going to look like you were forced to do it. If you don't act then, and the media frenzy goes full bore, you're going to be in the same position Clinton was. You haven't got a chance. So make your decision. This is kind of where things are going. And as I've said before, theoretically, if the government internally is still, by some bizarre set of rationalities, determined that it's truth embargo uber all, and that they're absolutely not going to relent, then they're going to have to stop these congressional hearings. They're going to have to stop this initiative in its tracks. So far, they haven't done that. Something else happened, though, which is quite intriguing, which your listeners are going to love. I've talked about this on the air, but many of them probably haven't heard this. And here's the story. The congressional initiative was going to hopefully launch late last year. It didn't happen. And it got postponed. And finally, based upon certain understandings I had, I put a firm date of April 31. I thought we were going to have the DVDs and we were going to launch it. It was still earlier in the year. The primaries hadn't really gotten underway. I was going to go to Washington and do this. Of course, I didn't know how bad the politics was going to get,
right.
The scandals that were going to break.
You were on.
So as it turns out, good thing. But I had announced it for April 31.
Right.
Now, understand that in that testimony that took place last May, it is on the disc, is a couple of hours about the Clintons and the Rockefeller Initiative, naming names. Of course, this has been out there for years, but now it's on a DVD disc in a citizen hearing with former members of Congress listening to it. And so as far as the Clintons knew, those DVDs are going to be shipped on April the 31st. As it happens, as April 31st arrived, I realized it ain't going to happen. I was not going to have those DVDs. And so on the 31st of April, I put out a PRG update announcing that it had been delayed again. Didn't put a new date on it, but I said it's been delayed again. Just 48 hours, less than that, really. It was taped in midday. So about 36 hours after I put out that PRG update, well before I'm sure he could have seen it or known about it, Bill Clinton turned up on the Jimmy Fallon show that evening, but it was taped during the day, of course. And Jimmy Fallon just happens to ask him about extraterrestrials.
Or do you mean Jimmy Kimmel?
Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought, well, isn't that a coincidence? No, it's not. A coincidence. No, it's not. First of all, nobody goes on these late-night talk shows without talking to the producer about what they're going to talk about.
110%.
And if you're the former president of the United States, just triple that.
Right.
All right? 330%. And so Jimmy Kimmel asked him about extraterrestrials because Bill Clinton wanted him to ask about extraterrestrials. And when he was asked that question, what Clinton did, and you can find this on YouTube quite easily, it's not hard, just YouTube Clinton Kimmel UFO. He said, well, back in the beginning, I think of my second term, we looked into Area 51 to see if there was any aliens there, and there weren't. He didn't do any such thing. And also, because the Roswell thing was coming on, I checked all the Roswell records and to see if that was real. No, he didn't. Didn't do any of that. It's a total lie. What he did do was engage Lawrence Rockefeller from 93 in the first 3 years of his first term regarding the Rockefeller Initiative and Rockefeller's desire that he release all the UFO files. And but he didn't refer to the Rockefeller Initiative because they never have, even though it's known, we have all the documents been out there for 20 years. Neither Bill or Hillary Clinton have ever acknowledged it existed. And the reason for that is her desire to be president. In any event, then he finishes off his answer to this question by saying, well, I don't know if the ETs say that they are, but if they were to come here, I guess it would probably be a reason for us to all come together. In other words, he repeated the Reagan mantra.
Right.
And it was done. Now, I believe that the reason this happened at all is that Clinton's, knowing that those DVDs were on their way, wanted to do this to sort of inoculate them, particularly him, a little bit against what might emerge from that once the Rockefeller Initiative, Clinton stuff, was possibly in play. That way he can say, I just mentioned the other day that I looked into Roswell, looked into Area 51, blah, blah, blah. So it's not like I've really tried to hide this or whatever, just something, right? It's called a limited hangout, an inoculation move, standard stuff. But it wasn't a coincidence. And so the fact that he did that, and the fact that no one, all the problems with the DVDs have been internal, not outside, but internal.
Right.
The government has done nothing that I'm aware of, and I've looked at it hard, that has moved to block me from this initiative. They certainly didn't block the citizen hearing on disclosure, right? And so that could change between now and November. Anything is possible. But at this point, I don't see it.
Didn't you feel, I mean, this is what I saw. Clinton's body language was funky. He was fidgeting. He knew the question was coming, but he was still completely uncomfortable. And we're all studies of body language. What was your impression as you watched him fidget in that chair?
I'm not skilled in that area. I don't have any talent there. But he should have been, because look, this is a big deal. The Clintons, Hillary Clinton was involved in the Rockefeller Initiative. Clinton allowed it to go on. Podesta knew all about it. Leon Panetta, who was the chief of staff, knew all about it. This was an opportunity for Clinton to be the disclosure president. It could have happened, but Clinton came under attack from 80 different directions. I mean, they just hit him with everything they had, tied him up politically and so forth. And of course, they started bringing out all his dirty laundry, which I think might have been turned over to Richard Mellonscape by possibly elements of the intelligence community, which had been a huge breach. Yeah. But in any event, they rained down hell upon him, and so he didn't actually do it. He did not become the disclosure president. But the Rockefeller Initiative did take place, and of course it eventually became known because Grant Cameron got a huge number of documents under FOIA that confirmed it. So Clinton serves out his second term. He's impeached. He's mad. He's pissed off, and he could very well, any time during his second term or even after leaving office, could have said, "Okay, you guys, you prevented me from being the disclosure president, but I'm gonna tell him anyway. I'm gonna go to the public and say, hey, this is real. Start looking into it," and trip the whole process. It would end the truth embargo. But he had a problem, a big problem. His wife's political ambitions. His wife desired to be president, and his wife, of course, whatever the CIA had on Clinton, whatever Richard Mellonscape had on Clinton, that was nothing compared to what Hillary Clinton had on Clinton. And so his wife was not somebody he could afford to double-cross, and so he had to keep his mouth shut while she pursued her ambitions, which are now 8 years later, actually 12 years later, 14 years later. So that was the dilemma that Clinton faced. And as this thing moved forward, understand, disclosure is a two-edged sword for the Clintons. he can certainly take credit for the initiative. He can certainly claim, I would have brought this out, but I was prevented. I was blocked. Okay, fine. But then he has to also own the fact that he and his wife have said absolutely nothing since 1996, right? 18 years. Have never said anything, and because to tell the truth, the American people, to say, yeah, we know there's an ET presence. Podesta knows there's an ET presence. We couldn't act on it, but I didn't say anything because I wanted to be president of the United States. So that's going to be a real problem for them. And it's going to be a problem for everybody in the administration that have kept silent. The only one that's come forward is John Podesta. And while he won't acknowledge really the Rockefeller Initiative, he is the only one of that administration to come forward and call for the release of UFO files.
Right.
Twice. So they have a very complicated connection to this issue that's twisted around their own political ambitions, their own scandals, their own problems, which means that ultimately the Clintons have done what almost all politicians do now. They put the welfare of themselves ahead of the welfare of the nation. And the people are fed up with this. They hate it. And this is why, respect in politicians is at all-time lows, approval of Congress all-time lows. There are a few people that aren't that way. God bless them, and they stand out, but there are not enough of them to really affect the course of things. So the Clintons have a real dilemma. And all I can say is, the sooner they tell the truth, the better. Right? I think her chance of becoming president are better if she tells the truth rather than continue to play the game. But whatever. I'm sure advisors are telling her exactly the opposite. So, yeah, if I were Bill Clinton, even if I be asked that question, which I'm almost sure he did, I'm going to be real uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's
a lot riding on what I say.
That's right, and there's no preemptive strike like that. Jimmy Kimmel knew, that was worked exactly.
No way.
Ever.
Because you do that, and there won't be you pull something like you pull a surprise like that on a former president, and watch how difficult it's going to be to get any political figure on your show after that.
Ever again.
Ain't going to happen.
That's right.
And so I take a little credit there. I mean, I think I moved them to respond in a very oblique way. But let's face it, the DVDs are done, and the Clintons are all over those DVDs, and so they will have to face it eventually. But it is interesting for me to note that even though there's some things going on right now that disturb me, there's been no effort to block either the citizen hearing or the congressional hearing initiative, which means it's possible that a significant number of people inside government in the know on this issue are resigned to the process. In other words, if you can do it, if you get the hearings and the truth embargo is ended, okay, fine. If you don't, fine. We'll continue with the status quo. But if you get it done, more power to you. I'm hoping that's what I'm sensing. Now that could change tomorrow. I mean, at any time they could suddenly decide, oh no, this ain't going to happen. In which case they will take measures. We shall see. But at this point, the launch will be in November the 5th, or rather those DVDs will be shipped November the 5th, or to arrive November the 5th.
I have to stop you right there.
Hold on,
Stephen, check this out.
Yeah.
Remember, the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes Day. Is
November the 5th Guy Fawkes Day?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, I'll use that. That'll be great.
Remember.
I will start telling everybody that the DVDs are going to be scheduled to arrive on Guy Fawkes Day. I love it.
One of our listeners just sent me a JPEG of that, and I will send this to you after the show tonight. And yeah. Is that a crazy? Well, they say there are no coincidences.
That is purely coincidence. This thing has been delayed repeatedly, and I finally decided it couldn't start until after the election, so that all the sitting members, all the House members, and 1/3 of the Senate would either know they won or lost, and so they know their situation, and that the politics, the ugly politics of the campaign, will essentially be over, but they still have 2 months to serve. And I'd be talking to him in that context. I completely had given a thought to Guy Fawkes Day, but you're right.
That is cool.
The election is on the 4th, and the plan will be for the DVDs to arrive on the 5th.
Every 2 years or every 4 years, does your hope increase, or does it wane, or is it just the same? You're just moving along, and Washington is whatever it's going to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, every time there's a new president, we have a new president. Obviously, there's the potential for that president to take the bull by the horns. I mean, this will be the greatest political legacy probably any president will ever have. If the president is first, if Vladimir Putin goes first, well, forget that. But when Bush was elected, I thought maybe there was a possibility, but that evaporated pretty quickly. When he's elected the second term, things weren't very good. My expectations have gone up and down like a roller coaster for years. There have been some times when I felt the door was opening. I saw windows of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it was wishful thinking, but there were times when I knew the door was closed. When Obama was elected, when I saw the election coming, and I thought he was going to win, when he was elected, I clearly saw the potential, and I talked about it. Some extraordinary things happened when Obama was elected.
Is it a Democratic Republican thing, or are you basing it on personality?
No, it's basing it on much more than that. I think the Republicans are less likely to disclose than Democrats, frankly. I believe that. You see, the Rockefeller Initiative, which took place from 93 to 96, was during the first 3 years of the Clinton administration. Hillary was obviously a very powerful first lady, and we had the documents to confirm she was involved. Leon Panetta was the chief of staff to Clinton at the time. Of course, he knew everything going on in the White House, so he was clearly aware of the Rockefeller Initiative. John Podesta was a key advisor to Clinton in the White House, and he clearly knew about the Rockefeller Initiative. Bill Clinton, who was serving in the House, eventually became the Secretary of Energy, was a close friend of the Clintons, and almost certainly he knew about the Rockefeller Initiative. Webster Hubbell also knew about it. He was a friend of the Clintons, and so forth. So that was the circumstances, 93 to 96. All right, so 14 years, 12 years go by, and I'm sorry, 96. So it's like the rest of his term. So it's like 12 years go by,
right?
And Barack Obama gets elected president. Okay, fine. And then what happens in rapid succession is that first Barack Obama calls on John Podesta to be basically his chief of transition. He's actually co-chair of the transition team, but believe me, he outranked the other person was a woman. So he's like chairing the transition team. Whoa, how about that?
Right.
I mean, and Podesta wasn't just on the staff in 93 and 96. In 2002, 2003, he called for the release of all UFO files of the National Press Club, twice. One of those we have the tape of. The other tape we're still trying to find. You can find his comments. The 26 key seconds are all over the YouTube.
Yeah, incredible words. I've watched.
Right,
so
and so he's the co-chair. The co-chair of the transition team. One of their key functions is to help the president pick the administration. So, in rapid succession, who gets brought into the administration? Well, Leon Panetta, who was the chief of staff during the Rockefeller Initiative, is made Secretary of Defense. Or CIA, one or the other. He was CIA chief and the Secretary of Defense, whichever came first. I think it was Secretary of Defense first.
Right. I think you're right.
Okay, he knew about it. And then Bill Richardson, they were tapping him to be Secretary of Commerce. Now he did take the job because he had a problem, which could have made it a problem for him to be confirmed. But still, they tried to get him as Secretary of Commerce, right? And who do they pick for Secretary of State? Hillary Clinton. And when you get Hillary, you get Bill. And so you got Bill and Hillary attached to the administration. You've got
Panetta, Podesta
over at the Defense, and then you've got Podesta as the chair. So what are the odds that a new president would come into office 12 years after this initiative and bring in all of the key people attached to the initiative right into the heart of his administration, unless perhaps they were thinking about, okay, if we're going to disclose, these are the people I have around me. So I'm seeing Obama as the likely disclosure president. But, and I still believe that to this day. However, the Republicans had other plans. Keep in mind that the president that discloses the ET presence, if he's first or she is first, will achieve one of the greatest political legacies of all time, and that legacy will extend to their party. And that's going to be a huge benefit. And therefore, the last thing the Republicans would have wanted would be for Obama to come in and disclose the ET presence. So, if you want to stop a president from doing that, how do you do that?
It's my
how
next
would you
question.
Stop that?
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you. What you do is similar to what they've done in the past. When Bush came into the White House, all the Democrats were riding the glory of the Clinton administration, the relatively good 8 years, and the relatively good financial situation in the country. And so the first thing he did was lower taxes on the rich and start to bankrupt the Treasury, to strip all of that out so that there wasn't any money in the Treasury and there was no money to pay for, Democrat social policies. In other words, he sort of gutted their tools, took their tools away from them. And similar things like that have done in the past. So he simply come in and disrupt the situation. But this was a big deal, and it was going to take more than just some minor maneuver. So rather than simply plug up the toilets, steal all the light bulbs, they basically decided to burn the White House to the ground. And that way it was going to be a lot harder for the Democrats to do anything profound. And how they did that was, in my view, pretty straightforward. I mean, they realized as early as July that McCain had no chance in the election based on their internal polls.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometime June, July, and the end of October, they went to, or mid-October, they went to see their skull and bones buddies over at Lehman Brothers and basically said, look, we have got to take some maneuvers here, and so you're going to have to collapse. And here's your choice. You can collapse now, and you're going to end up getting bailed out and paid off, and you'll be fine. Or you can hang on a little longer, and end up collapsing under the Democrats, in which case a lot of you are going to go to jail. Broke. And so Lehman Brothers collapses suddenly, and immediately you've got people all over the White House calling for massive response, yelling it's the greatest economic risk and danger since the Depression. The whole world's going to come to a halt, blah, blah, blah. And they start shoving huge amounts of money out the door to these banks, bailing them out fast. And that is well underway, obviously, before Barack Obama ever gets in the White House. If you're elected in early November, you go into the White House on January the 20th. And so essentially, they were able to drain the Treasury and send the country into massive economic downturn, bankrupt the country, so that when Obama finally walks in the White House, he's in a complete national crisis. The money's gone. And what are you going to do now? You're going to go walk out in front of the American people and say, sorry about the collapse of the economy, sorry about you guys losing your jobs, your houses, your pensions, but there's ETs here?
Right.
No.
Right.
So they burnt the White House to the ground, and that gutted the Obama administration. He's never recovered. They've had him under their thumb since day one. His administration has been pretty much a failure. So he was not the disclosure president. And one day I hope to learn just how, to what degree this disclosure possibility played in the strategies of the almost completely Republican Wall Street power brokers as they orchestrated the entire collapse bailout process, which paid them all off, set them back up again, and no one went to jail.
Well, you know,
Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, and I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall because as Obama took office, for a few different things, for a few different reasons. One, the main, he's got to go over things, and ET is one of the. I mean, it's there. He's now the sitting president, and
yeah, but he's not going to be briefed. They wouldn't have. Look.
But my point is exactly what you're saying. What was facing him was a much, immediate need of money, of jobs, of Detroit. What was happening with the auto industry, advertising, radio dollars,
financial collapse.
Yeah, financial collapse, and that whatever needed to be said to him at that time may not have been said at all. And I would have loved to have
he wouldn't
been
have been briefed regardless. No.
Right.
Presidents haven't been briefed for a long time. I don't think Bush was briefed. Obama wasn't briefed. Clinton wasn't briefed. The last president that was probably briefed on, one of the only presidents briefed on the ET issue was probably H.W. Bush. I don't think that, I only think Reagan was tipped off, meaning, Ronald, there's ETs here, but don't worry about it. We got it under control. And Ronald said, fine, you take care of that. And H.W. was certainly briefed, probably even before he was in the White House. But certainly not Clinton, not Obama. It's, again, secret empire, separated out. That includes the Intelligence Committee. I assure you, the Intelligence Committee isn't told squat about this. They're viewed with disdain. The people in the secret empire have got it made. They got great pay, great jobs. They're saving the world. They got incredible secrets. They got all kinds of cool tech. They look at the politicians in Washington as clowns and fools. And they don't want to tell them anything. And interestingly enough, as Washington has degraded and the Congress has degraded, it's filled up with a lot of clowns and fools. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. They treated it like they were that way, and not surprisingly, they metamorphized into that. And so now there are plenty of clowns and fools on the Hill that confirms their preconceived ideas, that you can't tell these people anything. They're not smart enough to understand it. They'll blab it, whatever. And so they're, the whole system is kind of wrapped up now. It's going to take a lot to change that. But no, Obama wouldn't have been told anything. However, remember, Obama would have been informed about the Rockefeller Initiative by Podesta. Mm-hmm. Now, it's one thing to brief the president. In other words, it's one thing for the Pentagon to give a president a deep briefing and maybe even tours of facilities regarding the ET issue. It's another for someone to just tell the president, yeah, there's ETs here. Well, Podesta could have done that.
Right.
Probably did, if he didn't already know, and he probably didn't, if you look at his background. So the Clintons certainly were aware of the ET reality and probably have privately dug into it a little bit to research it. Obviously, they're not going to get anything from the government itself. But certainly there was enough to inform him that it's real. And understand, let's not forget, there's 67 years of research out there on the internet right now. There's thousands of books. There's documents. There's massive evidence in the public domain. Forget about what the Pentagon has. So you don't have to have a briefing from the Pentagon to know the ETs are here. Just go out to the damn library and read the research of some pretty good people. So, again, this game is very weird, complex, and strange. But let me give you some numbers. Based upon the polling, based upon the polling, probably 65% of everybody on Capitol Hill privately believes this phenomenon is real. And 65% of everybody working in the White House believes it's real. 65% of the people in the CIA and the Pentagon, even regardless, they have nothing to do with ETs, they intellectually, personally believe it's real. And then, based upon surveys that have been done, the conservative percentage of contactees, meaning physical contact with ETs, is 2%. Now that's 2% of 360 million people. It's 7.2 million. But let's apply it to the Capitol Hill. Based upon that percentage, and given the fact there's approximately 10,000 people working on the Hill,
right?
That's 200.
Yes, it is.
Right? So you've got 200 contactees working on the Hill right now. In the House and Senate, 535. You've got 10 to 11. So you see how bizarre this is getting? how strange, how just completely screwed up. It's a game of don't ask, don't tell. You have a you don't need to know. I can't talk. It's crazy, and not surprisingly, this massive secret that is not a secret, that is the elephant in the room, the billion-pound gorilla in the room. It's screwing everything up. It's twisting and distorting and creating dysfunction everywhere. It's just a god-awful mess. And to some degree, it's the same thing is happening around the world, to one degree or another. And so we just got to end it. Tell the truth. Tell the truth, and watch how fast things start to shift back towards what we'll call non-dysfunctional status. Watch how fast reform actions can start taking place. Watch how fast you can get things done. Just tell the damn truth.
I was watching some of that. Didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was watching some of the citizens' hearings, and I was watching you sitting there next to, specifically, I think Greer comes to mind, but, so you're sitting there. And you're listening, you're not speaking, but I know you, and your wheels were turning, you were thinking and listening. But looking back, was there something that you needed to say that you didn't get to say, or was there anything that wasn't presented in the hearing? Because I know you're very vocal and you speak well. Was there anything that you needed to get out that you didn't?
Not really. I had a couple moments there to be in front of the committee. I said what I had to say that was appropriate. There were a number of areas that were not involved in that hearing. They were deliberately kept out. You can't cover it all, even in 30 hours, not even close.
Right.
We focused on certain key areas of evidence that I considered the most powerful, and that was done, and it went fine. I mean, the hearing, I was a nervous wreck, but we had a lot of good people working for us, and a lot of volunteers as well as shooting staff. We got it filmed, we got it done, and it came across okay. And many people have contacted me, and in one way or another have conveyed the thought, the point that they thought it was the most important event in this issue ever done, and that it moved them to tears. They thought this was it. This could be pretty much the beginning of the end. Nothing that I've ever seen that's taken place in this issue since I got into it, that was 18 years ago, compares. That doesn't mean something prior to that didn't reach that level. I don't know. But the response, and I've not published these comments. I think that probably should get up on the net at one point, but there's been so much nothingness going on internally. Still, the reaction was very powerful. And that's another indicator to me that this probably is the key to the door.
Well, there's no doubt, and the silence and the attention and the focus in the room is what you need to be applauded for, and the concentration, like you said, 30 hours, and it's just it was an amazing event, and we all applaud you and commend you. Yeah, no doubt.
It's a critical mass thing. You can put so much uranium together or plutonium, whatever, and nothing happens. You hit the critical mass, boom.
Exactly.
What the advocacy issue on and disclosure has been unable to do is achieve the critical mass. That event came about as close to it, but we're not done yet. By the way, we got a good deal of media coverage. The Boston bombing took a lot of it away, but once again, the government had no response, nothing. Complete and total silence. That's a good indicator.
Well, exactly.
That's your indicator that you've done a good job. If you've made a fool of yourself, they might say something. But when you do something like that, there's nothing they can say, because anything they say will invite media questions, and they can't afford those questions.
Before I let you get out of here, how can everybody, help PRG?
Well, certainly, everybody that wants to should get on our mail list so that they get the announcements of the launch and so forth. PRG at ParadigmResearchGroup.org. Google my name, Stephen Bassett, comes right up on the web. So we have a PRG update list. We're trying to build that up to as many thousands as possible. When it's launched, I'll be contacting everybody and telling them, okay, we will have a place where they can find all the Twitter addresses and the email pages for all the members of Congress, and we want them to just get on it and start hitting them with tweets, many as you want. And we've got samples up there and so forth. All that will be run from factsonwashington.org. So we want everybody to participate in the tweet storm, I call it, which will make them aware these DVDs are on their way, and then keep them aware that they need to look at them in the weeks and months that follow. So that's one way. Obviously, contributions are helpful. I'd like to raise about $50,000 more to ensure that this congressional hearing initiative has the maximum opportunity to succeed. And a lot of that money will go towards the media relations. In other words, I want to hire a full-time, and I know who it is, full-time media person that will be working all the back channels to get me on every talk show and get this issue in play. And that's not, doesn't get volunteered. And the volunteer could do it. It needs to be a pro. So I'm trying to raise that money. So if a major funder wants to step forward, wants to see this thing end, that would be wonderful. Obviously, they can contact me at that email address, prg@paradigmresearchgroup.org. And this is, some of the things that people can do. But the goal is simple. Make a full run to Congress using the CHD DVD sets as the lead, and persuade one committee to sit and listen to probably 20 to 30 witnesses selected for the strength and importance of their testimony. Let the media cover it and see what happens. I believe what will happen is the truth embargo will be over pretty quickly. That's the goal. And even if we don't achieve that in the 3 months that I'll be there, I guarantee you the disclosure issue will be raised substantially higher in the public's mind and in the media's mind, and we will be closer to a breakout, hopefully next year.
Always fascinating having you on, I have to say. Just in an extraordinary evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Bassett. And
my pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine, and I will be talking to you soon. We have some other things that we need to discuss per our discussion earlier today, and we'll do that off air.
Very good.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bassett, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Stephen Bassett, PRG. Fascinating gentleman, and there's nothing more to be said. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm going to take two. Shoot me another email, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Follow us on Twitter, @JChurchRadio, #DM RadioNet. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will. On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
He's always giving it to you straight.
JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Erica, Ricky, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Wow, it's Thursday. Stephen Bassett, thank you, sir. My brain that is just, I've said it so many times since this show started. You come here to learn. That's why. It's like old school radio, man. Just dial it in, come hang out, and learn something, and make sure that it's fascinating. I'm looking at Twitter here. And, well, I agree that went too fast. I hear that. Do I smell a giveaway? What does that mean? What? Giveaway what? You're tempting me to give away something here? I don't. You have to be a little more specific. A couple of things, and there's no time for a phone call. How could I give something away? Is that Is that what Oh man. All right. A couple of points though about Mr. Bassett. I was tempted, by the way, to give away. I couldn't I don't know if we have enough time to or respond back. You know what? What I'm holding in my hand, I'll give this away tomorrow night. I just got some Bridgewater Triangle DVDs in the mail. And one of the most fascinating documentaries ever. And if you go back, and so I'll do that tomorrow night, okay? So I've got a pile of them here. And if you remember the Bridgewater show, oh, man, that was one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long time. So we'll do that tomorrow night. One of the things that we were talking about off air, Mr. Bassett and myself, was the Malibu deep underwater base and how this could kickstart this whole thing and help what he is doing. And isn't that a weird twist of fate? And if there's any way that we could help, Mr. Bassett, and I hate to say it, but there are no coincidences. I hate saying that. But isn't that strange? And we talked about that at length today. And if there's any way that I could help him or vice versa for that matter, but I think it would just be absolutely amazing. And wouldn't it be weird if this little catalyst, this little thing that Dale Romero, his son Jason, Maxwell, this radio show, Dark Matter, kicked off something like that's significant, and it was just something that we almost, and I talked about it last night at the end of the show. I'm watching Rick, but Rick, I think you've already got a DVD in the mail on the way to you. I said this last night. What if we sat on this information? What if anybody sat on their information? He had brought up Malmstrom Air Force Base and the missile shutdown. What if Colonel Salas sat on his information and he didn't speak at the citizens' hearing? What if? It's just a big, long string of what ifs. Well, you know what it's called, coming forward. And that is the reason why I did what I did. Okay? And it's we're all rolling that rock uphill. And it's very important. It is. Okay. Couple of things. You wouldn't believe who's calling on the phone right now, but they're calling on my cell phone. I think they think they're calling into the station. And that'll be tomorrow night. All right. Let's wrap this up. Oh, a couple of emails that came in during the show. I wanted to address this one. This came in from JC, and he says, Obama knew the state of the country was in before he got there. Well, yes, he did. Well, the whole country knew. Everybody saw that unfolding leading up to that. I'll never forget. I was actually I was in broadcasting school back then and looking to leave and graduate and move on to the broadcasting world. And when all of the chips fell like they did, I was going to go and work here. I was going to go work there. And suddenly in radio, this is what happened. Let me tell you, I'll spend 60 seconds on this before we wrap up today's show. The radio industry depends on, I went into sportscasting, but what do you hear when you're driving down the road? There's a few things that come into play. Number one, 8 o'clock in the morning, who's driving to work? Basically 30 to 50-year-old men. That's the majority. That's who's in their car stuck in traffic. What are they listening to? They're listening to sports radio, some AM station. They're not rocking out to Lady Gaga on some FM station. They are listening to sports radio on their way to work so they can go hang out at the water cooler and talk about what happened the night before in the sports world. And they want to show all their buddies who's king of sports knowledge. And that's what goes on. Well, that means what are they listening to? The advertising, that advertising budget dollar is cars, number one, and two, basically Budweiser. And you can throw in whatever you want to throw in there. But when the economy crashed like it did, Detroit ran out of money. The advertising dollars that went into the radio industry shrunk immediately overnight. Everybody was broke. Nobody had money. So all of those radio stations were cutting back. What wasn't going to happen? They weren't going to hire some guy fresh out of broadcasting school to work at the radio station. Everybody there suddenly had two jobs because somebody else was just let go. Intern programs were shut down. Everything was just shrunk overnight. And I was like, oh, man, really? And that was way before Obama took office. So trust me, he knew, I knew, you knew, the entire country knew what the economy was, and that was handed off to Obama. And he knew that it was coming. So that's it. This isn't a political show. I'm just telling you how it affected me and my family personally. So, yes, we all knew. We all knew what was going on. So I just had to answer that. And that came in from JC. JC, does that answer that? Yes, it does. We all knew. We all saw the writing on the wall. It wasn't just Obama. So, all right, let's see. I had a dream about Jimmy on a boat, and something was watching him from under the waters, watching and waiting. That's from Walter. Yeah, it's my big fear. And another thing that Mr. Bassett pointed out, our imaging is recent. And, it's what we have done, what we have gathered off of Google Earth. What if something has changed down there just recently in the last week or two, and we go out there on a boat and find out that thing has just been blown up and it's like gone? It's not like, and he said, it's not like they've been making passes out there just recently and everything is fresh and updated daily. We don't know. And that was interesting. Made me scratch my head. We got to get those boats out there now. We're working on it, by the way. And I think we're close to making an announcement. It's a ship, by the way. It's not a boat that we're taking out there. Thank you to Stephen Bassett. Tomorrow is our special 4th of July show with Adam Gorightly. And if you haven't listened to him lately or ever, you've got to tune in tomorrow. I promise you, it's going to be anything but boring. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Night Watch, followed by Spooky South Coast with Tim Weisberg. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Show's produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. Announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Music is by Doug Aldrich. The show intro is performed by Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Be safe, and I'll see you right here tomorrow.